Hello everyone. We hope you're doing well. We're doing great, and we truly appreciate your ongoing support. We'd like to briefly address some comments regarding our audiobook series. Rest assured, progress is ongoing. That said, your feedback is vital. If there's a novel you particularly enjoy and want to hear more of, please let us know in the comments. Each chapter requires a financial investment, so we can only continue series that receive strong audience interest. Although we retain core names and plot lines, we make significant editorial changes to enhance clarity, pacing, and immersion. These are not simple recitations. We work hard to deliver a polished, thoughtful listening experience. Without sufficient feedback or engagement, we may need to discontinue a series. So if you're enjoying something, don't stay silent. Your input truly matters. Note, our default audio speed is 3x. If that's too fast, let us know. We're happy to adjust it. Interested in early access to unreleased audiobooks? Visit our Patreon. You'll get to experience new content before it reaches YouTube. Just to clarify, I'm a fan like you. I've purchased these novels and adapted them with care, while respecting all rights and guidelines. For updates, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, X. YouTube update: recently, YouTube flagged some of our content for including mature themes, realistic violence, and darker story elements. As a result, we've decided to stop uploading anything that violates YouTube's guidelines. If you'd like access to the full, uncut versions including the more intense or mature content, you can find them on our Patreon page, where we upload everything first. Available now on Patreon: Shattered Innocence transmigrated into a novel as an extra. Transmigrating over 10,000 years late, I was forced to become a mighty presence. I, the celestial dragon, rule the heavens through the double gate, reigning supreme in countless worlds with peace taming, Tower of God sequence strength, cultivation when you take things to the extreme. Naruto Izuno with cyst. WTF, the centuries-old ancestor in our family take concubine again. Plus 18, Ichi, reincarnated in Bleach as a wizard. Thanks for listening and happy listening. Then he wouldn't be blamed for resorting to extraordinary measures. Then he heard Redfield say, she said her name was Pudding, but it's most likely a false name. Pudding? Chapter 314 Big Mom Spy Charlotte Pudding. Pudding? To be honest, this name is very common. The girl who called this name is absolutely no less, but the peculiarities of this woman on the ship coupled with this name, which is not unfamiliar to Will, is inevitably provoking people's imagination. In particular, the pirate flag that was originally planted on that island just now was the logo of Big Mom. If he remembers correctly, this Pudding is probably the one who will trick Luffy's group in the future, a three-eyed hybrid who has eaten the fruit of memory. Redfield's inability to peer into her memories is most likely due to the peculiarities of the memory devil fruit. It all seems to make sense. But there is still a final confirmation to be made, and once you see the third eye that cannot be hidden, everything will be clear. I know about this. Do you have any concerns for anyone other than this one, Pudding? Redfield shook his head. They are all poor people. Will understood and then instructed Redfield not to do anything rash so as not to alert the snake. Everything was quiet until after dinner. Since there weren't that many empty rooms on the Avengers, the dozen or so people Will had rescued barely managed to squeeze into 3 rooms to sleep. In spite of this, they still felt very happy to be out of that filthy dungeon. Some things can only be cherished when they are lost. When Will looked at the night, he felt it was time to immediately use the silent fruit's ability to eliminate all the noise he made, and then it was the classic combination of the transparent fruit plus heat fruit, and directly arrived at Pudding room without any sound or shadow. There were 4 women crammed into one big bed, and they didn't seem to be sleeping very well, with the blanket being stirred to nowhere and a thin layer of sleepwear that couldn't hide their good figures at all. If Will had chosen to become a flower thief, he probably would have become famous, but with an even more unacceptable notoriety than now. The first time he saw her, he thought about what had happened outside the dungeon, which made him more and more suspicious. Will wasn't sure if she was really asleep, but it didn't matter. As soon as the Haki of the Conqueror was released, the 4 women in the room immediately fell dead asleep. Even if they were banged 10 times in a row, they wouldn't shout, "Wait a minute. My husband is here." After considering all the details in place, Will reached out his sinful hand and opened Pudding's head curtain. It's really her. Although Pudding was sleeping, the third eye on her forehead, which was closed tightly, had already revealed everything. Pudding? Charlotte Pudding? You didn't even bother to change your name because you thought no one would recognize you? So what is all this about? Was it a trap set up for him by Big Mom? What would have happened if he had chosen to leave them alone? Will she find excuses to approach him again? As long as he thinks of the strange ability of the memory fruit, Will is thinking not to directly kill Pudding. After all, she can modify the memory of others. This kind of ability, if used well, is simply called a bug. Will now seriously doubts that Big Mom's plan is to plant Pudding at his side, and then look for opportunities to modify his memories to turn him directly into one of them. If she can easily subdue the faceless pirates without a single loss of a soldier, Big Mom will probably wake up laughing in her sleep, and even if she fails, it doesn't matter, because Pudding is the most unpopular one among her many children, and often uses the word ugly and disgusting to describe Pudding third eye. Unknowingly, Will has come very close to the truth. On second thought, Will recovered her head curtain and left the place with the door fruit. He didn't just go ahead and kill Pudding because a spy whose identity had already been revealed was the most harmless of all. As for the fruit of memory, it's not as big a problem as one might think, but unless one is defenseless or completely defenseless, who would allow her to stick her hand in their head? When there is time to find an opportunity to tell Nami and others to just be on the lookout. The other thing is that Pudding is actually a poor girl, growing up with disgusting eyes and hearing vicious words from others. It's lucky that her mind is not completely twisted and she only has a terrible second personality. So unless Pudding touches his bottom line, such as hurting Nami, Robin and the others, Will is willing to give her a way out, after he destroys Big Mom. The next morning, Will called a meeting in the captain's name and warned the poor women he brought on board not to be disturbed. Except for Pudding, who had other intentions, they all had no objections. They were just unimportant servants, and they could not possibly be overheard when the adults had something confidential to discuss, so they went back to their rooms one by one in a sensible manner. Only Pudding hid the light in her eyes by pretending to be a coward and whispered, "I'm going to go to the bathroom." The others didn't suspect her, because their memories had already been re-edited by Pudding, and in their altered memories, Pudding was the woman who was captured at the same time as them, and because she was pretty, she was often taken away and abused by those pirates and was their most loving and pitying little sister. But they didn't know that the harmless little sister was planning to modify their memories again after her return, so as not to expose the fact that she had slipped out for so long and was found out by Will and the others. What Pudding doesn't know is that her identity was completely revealed just yesterday, and she was not killed just because she was still useful. In the captain's cabin, everyone was present, but out of caution Will still activated the fruit of silence. "What is it that I have to come over here for? I've got soup cooking over there." Snowball looks very cute in her little chef's uniform, and it would be even better if the impatient look on her face and the lady cigarette in her mouth could be removed. The others also looked puzzled, suddenly making it so formal and somewhat uncomfortable. So Will made a long story short and directly exposed the identity of Pudding as a spy. "Although you rarely mention it, I still want to tell you not to mention topics related to Big Mom in this recent period, so as not to alert the target." After talking about the identity of Pudding as a spy, Will looked at the little Snowball again. Chapter 315 Preparing for War. Little Snowball has been hiding her hatred for Big Mom, but Will knows how much she wants revenge. And now she holds on to the thighs that have been qualified to wage war with Big Mom, the same emperors. The faceless pirate group's high-end combat power is by no means inferior to the Big Mom pirate group and even a lot stronger. Even if the stalwarts are not as good, it is not an irreparable difference. But the longer she stayed on the ship, the more contradictory Snowball's heart became, because she knew that anyone would be in danger after Will led them to war with Big Mom and that death was certain, and she didn't want to put everyone in danger because of her own selfishness. She didn't want to put everyone in danger for her own selfish reasons, not to mention the fact that it wasn't long before this troublemaking captain of theirs got into trouble with the Navy and the world government again, so sometimes Snowball couldn't help but wonder if she should give up her revenge on Big Mom. Will her mom and dad spirits in heaven forgive her? Just then, Will told her that there was a spy sent by Big Mom on their ship, and also a devil fruit user, so they need to be careful, try not to alert the snake. All this time be careful, after this storm, Big Mom can't bounce for long. Actually Little Snowball gritted her teeth and was about to open her mouth when she was interrupted by Will. "I know I've made you wait too long, but the battle between the four emperors is no child's play. I also need time to prepare for it, besides there are too many emperors on the ocean. I think only one is enough. What do you guys think?" Will was now not hiding his ambition in front of his own crew in the slightest, and Robin and the others seemed to be used to it. If this was heard by Bartolomeo, who was staying behind on the Golden Island, this Will's #1 fan would probably faint again in happiness. Little Snowball was trying to persuade Will, but when she heard what he said afterwards, she remembered that Will had already said it when he invited her on board, that challenging the four emperors was part of his plan, and that it would not change with or without her presence. Or rather, it was her appearance that gave Will the perfect excuse to do it. This guy. Snowball stared at him in annoyance, almost expressing her feelings. Damn asshole. But why is her heart so excited? Will, who was glared inexplicably, immediately gave a look of "Why are you looking at me like that?" and then went on to advise, "Remember, don't show your vigilance too obviously, and of course don't be taken advantage of." And as to why Will suddenly knew so much about the woman named Pudding, Redfield asks himself. You've seen this woman before? Never seen it. Why? So how do you know what she's capable of and that she was sent by Big Mom? I just know, and I know more than you think, and don't ask me why. You can think of it as a special ability. Or a perk, a traveler perk. Will laughed, and now he is playing the role of a prodigy and doesn't need to care about other people's feelings, he just knows. So what can you do to me? Robin and the others smiled calmly at this. The captain of their ship always seemed to know something about everything, and never made a mistake. Everyone may have secrets or special abilities, which is a very common thing in this world. Otherwise, it would be hard to explain such black memories as Devil's Fruit, Crystal Ball Divination, different special abilities of different races, and various talent trees. Redfield himself was also a very special case, so he kept his mouth shut in good humor. The meeting was over, Snowball was still making soup in the kitchen and trotted out, and everyone else was returning to their original routines. Just now someone had been hiding outside to eavesdrop, and left only after realizing it was futile. Will put away the Infinity Gauntlet and deactivated the Silent Force field. Redfield, who was on his way back to his room, and Isho who heard him had a smirk on their faces. Will was able to detect the eavesdropper's presence, so Isho who had a special observation hockey and Redfield naturally found her long ago, but there was no need to say anything, anyway, nothing could be heard. On the other hand, Pudding, who had spent a lot of effort to no avail, returned to the room with a gloomy face, not caring at all what kind of impact the evil Pudding would have on the others. Pudding, what took you so long? Pudding? Your face. It's horrible. In the room, Pudding looked at the three good sisters in front of her with malice, then immediately changed back to her charming face and slowly stepped forward. Pudding. Are you okay? Yes. I am. That's good. Next time don't wander off, you'll be reprimanded if the Lord catches you. I know, thank you. Can you please do me one more favor? Of course we can, we're sisters. That's great. Pudding slammed her hands into the heads of the two women closest to her and pulled out what looked like a film memory from their head, and they fainted on the spot. The other woman opened her mouth in shock, but before she could scream, Pudding pulled out her memories and stunned her as if by magic. How troublesome. Sisters. No kidding. I don't even know your name. It is a great insult that I, the 35th daughter of the Charlotte family, should have to share a bed with you. Evil Pudding showed her third eye and tore off her usual disguise. However, she immediately restrained herself. Forget it, it's better to complete Mother's task as soon as possible. She went to the bathroom for a long time, and she definitely wanted to erase the memory fragments that had just accidentally exposed her nature. Soon, she finished tampering with the memories of the three women in the room with ease, and there was no flaw at all. It's like editing a movie. Just as Pudding was pondering how to trick Will, the target she had carefully tried to deal with was now standing in front of her with a curious face. It's just that Will came a little late and didn't see the exciting episode of memory modification earlier, but the unconscious women in the room and the malicious face of Pudding, without any concealment, have almost allowed him to recreate what just happened. Dual personality. That's really interesting. Chapter 316 Preparing for Building a Nation. In less than a month, the Faceless Pirate Group's territory has expanded by half again, and now Will's chips in his hands have increased to 33 islands. So far, Whitebeard's original sphere of influence has been snatched back by Will, and in addition, he has slightly expanded outward, and the situation is so good that both the 100 Beasts Pirate Group and the Big Mom Pirate Group seem to have acquiesced to the new four emperors' behavior. But if they continue to expand, then they will have to face the core forces of the other two emperors, such as the territory around Kaido's base camp, Ghost Island, and the all nations built around Cake Island. If Will chooses to continue to fight, it will mean a formal declaration of war, and the result of the war between the two four emperors will once again lead to a huge change in the world structure, which requires caution. There is also the naval headquarters that is slowly moving to the New World. With the support of many world government countries' members, they have slowly established a firm foothold in the New World, and formed a four-party domination pattern with Will and the other three emperors. That is to say, red-haired Shanks does not develop his own territory, otherwise, the structure of the New World will be even more chaotic. With more and more sites, the 70,000 SHIELD members that Will brought from the Sabati Islands were quickly digested. If he wants to protect the hard-fought turf, he really can't do it without these low-level subordinates. Unknowingly, the Faceless Pirate Group, which had only 2 or 3 kittens at the beginning, has grown into one of the superpowers on the seas, and it's a sight to behold. It wasn't until this step was completed that Will felt that he had completed the transition, that his bot was securely seated on the four-emperor throne, and that he could continue to plan the next step. It is worth mentioning that all this time Pudding has been extremely well behaved, except for always subconsciously fiddling with her head curtain. It is almost impossible to catch any flaw in her. This is a natural actor. More than Nami, Karina can deceive people, but also more intelligent, good at using their every advantage. Just a spy who was completely exposed on the first day on the ship, the more she tried to fit into the role, the more amusing it was to those in the know like Will, and there were times when Kobe, Baby 5 and the others almost laughed out loud at how strange they looked at Pudding. If it weren't for Pudding's excellent psychological quality, she might have wondered on the spot whether or not she had been discovered. It is good that Will reminded them in time and warned them all with a glare, which didn't reveal the truth and let Pudding continue to indulge in acting. On the 5th day after Will and his men returned to the Golden Island, a bombshell of news was dropped on the already dark and turbulent waters once again. A month later, the Faceless Pirates will hold a nation-building ceremony on the New World's Golden Island, welcoming all forces to come. No invitation, and no fancy games, just a message of, I want to build a nation. If you come, you are a friend, but if you do not come, that means you are an enemy. The last 4 emperor who chose to establish their own country is Big Mom. No one else was interested, but Will is different. His vision is not only on the sea, sooner or later he will lead his forces to completely replace the Celestial Dragon's rule. That's why it is very necessary to create such a country in advance. Will consolidated his forces and promised that the countries that joined him could continue as they were, in the same way that the world government joined the countries to guarantee the interests of all parties. Nothing has changed, just a few more formalities, and naturally, no one will object. No one would have objected. As soon as the news broke, the sea was buzzing with excitement. Needless to say, the strong parties in the underground world would not be so foolish as to oppose a 4th emperor at this juncture, so they quickly prepared the generous gifts they needed to prepare, and then set off for the Golden Island. Those who had offended Faceless Will, and were brave enough to work with Doflamingo to attack the Faceless Pirate group, were also struggling, as they wanted to take this opportunity to repair their past broken relationship while fearing that Will would not forgive them. One of the most tangled ones is the King of Loan Sharks, Dufeld, who has a good relationship with Big Mom. He suffered a lot of money when Will took revenge on him. Although he would not care about these losses with his wealth, Will's tough attitude really made him uncomfortable. It should be noted that at that time, Will was far from being the 4th emperor. Later, many people approached the Faceless Pirates and tried to reconcile with them without success, which made Dufeld feel that Faceless Will was definitely up to something, so he must consider carefully whether to go or not. In addition to the bigwigs of the underground world, countless pirates who wanted to join the 4th emperor, bounty hunters who wanted to fish in troubled waters, spies, and journalists all rushed onto Golden Island like sharks smelling blood. At the same time, the evil force Germa 66, which was once the hegemon of the North Blue Sea and was ruled by the Vinsmoke family, also saw the news. Many people had always thought that Germa 66 was nothing more than a fictitious force from the comics, but that was not the case in reality. But today, the army of evil that once united the North Blue Sea has gradually fallen, and it is impossible to even take revenge on the North Blue Sea's royal families. At this time, Vinsmoke Judge, the head of the House of Vinsmoke, the ruler of German 66, saw a new hope in this news. What if they put a 4th emperor flag on the front of the German 66? Once this tantalizing idea appeared, Vinsmoke Judge couldn't shake it off. Moreover, the Faceless Will is an emerging power that has only recently secured the throne of the 4th emperor, and if they can reach cooperation with each other at this time, they, the Germa 66, will definitely be more valued, and can even strive to become the most important alliance of the Faceless Pirates. Revenge against the North Blue Sea will no longer be a problem. Thinking of this, Vinsmoke Judge immediately called his several sons and daughter over. Immediately prepare a generous gift, and we will go to the founding ceremony of the 4th emperor, Faceless Will. Did father make a decision? Exactly. Whether or not we Germa 66 can make it big again depends on this action. If we hang the flag of the 4 emperors in front of Germa 66, our enemy will be scared silly, haha. Akiji, Nijai, and Yanji were laughing extraordinarily wildly. They didn't think it was humiliating, on the contrary, they thought it was more interesting. After all, the 4 emperors were much stronger than Germa 66, they couldn't be a match for any of the 4 emperors. Respect for the strong is the norm in this world, and there is nothing wrong with it. But Vinsmoke Raju had a different viewpoint as she felt that her father's decision might put the whole Vinsmoke family in danger. Chapter 317 Germa 66. Boom. With a loud noise, another island was moved to the side of the Golden Island by Will, since he had decided to set up this place as his base camp. The original size of the Golden Island was completely inadequate. However, this was not difficult at all for Will. In addition to the 15th island, which he had previously moved directly from the Sabati Islands, he moved 3 more islands in succession from other places. Will directly filled the huge gap in the middle connection with heated magma and sand, and then was covered with turf by the servants on the island. There was no problem at all. The size of the Golden Island has expanded 5 times, but the facilities and environment can't keep up. The good news is that we'll call back Tesoro directly, and with him, on Golden Island, it will live up to its name. Gold is the kind of thing that can make a plutocrat more vulgar, but it can also look glorious and high-end. The City of Gold was built with this concept in mind, and every visitor to the City of Gold did not find anything vulgar about the gold products everywhere, thanks to the artistic flair of Tesoro, the Golden Emperor. So when countless amounts of gold and various valuables were used by Tesoro to decorate the Golden Island, everyone opened their mouths and their eyes as they all gaped. It's fucking beautiful. Even they, the insiders who had seen the previous Gold Island environment, were stunned, so you can imagine what the scene will be like when that day arrives. Every day, Law uses his surgical fruit ability to change the layout of the island, transplanting plants and trees and so on. Isho Gravity Fruit is in charge of building roads, and Nami's Bubble Fruit is a bug for cleaning, as she can clean up the entire Golden Island by herself. Of course, she'd have to work herself to death, too. In addition to cooking for Will and others, Snowball also helps transport building materials every day, and her ability to do so is incredibly useful. And Robin's Flower Devil Fruits can be used as if there are hundreds of people by one person, which is extremely convenient. It didn't take many days for the faceless pirates to build a paradise on the Island of Gold, with such extravagance that people would bite their tongues. As it turns out, with the right Devil Fruit ability, you can do whatever you want. Even if you don't use it in battle, you can still be amazed at how it works in life. A month passed quickly, and Will thought that some guys might not dare to take the risk to come because of the pressure from the Navy and the world government, but he underestimated his own fierce reputation now. In the face of an emperor are not afraid of the two emperors, with him grabbing their territory left and right, along with angering the Navy and the world government, that he even made the celestial dragon afraid that they dare not show their faces and can only hide in the underground chamber trembling. What can they and ordinary people do? And even if the Navy does dare to come, who will win or lose is still uncertain. This is the home base of the faceless pirates, and if the War of the Best hadn't been placed in Manafort, giving the Navy the opportunity to build up its strength for so long, Whitebeard might not have lost. If the Navy thought it could win, it would have fought long ago, so why wait for the Whitebeard pirates to turn themselves in? Even if they do fight, the Navy's main target will definitely be the faceless pirate group, and may not fight to the death to stop the others. When it is time to leave or stay is not between their own thoughts. To be able to hang around in a dark world, but also to be able to make a name for themselves, which one of them is ordinary? They know who can be offended and who cannot be offended. If they don't come this time, there is no guarantee that they will be remembered by this lord, and in the future, their life and death are even more unpredictable. Just think of Big Mom's tea party, the guys who received the invitation and dared not to go have a good end. Last time, there was an unlucky man whose father or mother had died, so he had a special gift sent to explain why he couldn't come. Then what happened? Big Mom then sent someone to kill the relative of that man who was still alive. So it's better not to offend them. There are still 3 days left before the big day, but the various forces have already appeared on the scene and the biggest names are the Queen of the Pleasure District Stussy, World Economy Newspaper President Morgans, and all famous underground emperors. These guys are also regulars at the Big Mom tea party, now that the faceless pirates have not yet started a war with the Big Mom pirates, so they dare to come, otherwise their presence here today would be equivalent to standing in the gate of hell. It is worth mentioning that the King of Lone Shark, who once had a grudge against the faceless pirate group, Dufeld, has still not appeared, and we don't know whether he will come or not. Will hopes that he will not come because by then, he would be able to take care of the goods openly, and this man titled God of Fortune in the underworld was one of the richest men in the dark world. This time, Will entrusted everything to Tesoro, who had experience in this field. And he is more familiar with the guests who come to the ceremony, which is most appropriate. Everyone who arrives here loses their mind for a moment after seeing this magnificent golden island. Such a large island, all decorated with gold, how much would it cost? What's more important is that it is so artistic and not cliched at all. Although everyone knows that this must be the handiwork of Golden Emperor Tesoro, but to be able to accept such a big figure as his own, it proves even more that Faceless Will is awesome. Of course, some of these people had been to the Golden City of Tesoro, so it was a stark contrast to those bumpkins. Until the arrival of a legendary organization that pushed the excitement to a high tide. The Germa 66 of the Vinsmoke family has also come. At registration, a tall figure with a couple of curly-browed guys caused a ruckus. Germa 66? Isn't his a fictional evil army? Ha ha ha, who knows? Just wait, these idiots who want to blend in will definitely be thrown out. The ones who can say such ignorant words are all the pirates who want to join the fourth Emperor Faceless Will, and they are like frogs in a well, thinking that what they see is all there is. Those who really know about Germa 66 have all turned pale, even in the underworld, Germa 66 is a legendary force to be reckoned with, and those ignorant guys will probably get a taste of it soon. But the only thing they couldn't figure out was why Germa 66 was here. The Vinsmoke were royalty who could attend world conferences, and even the Navy and the world government facilitated that to some extent. Are they willing to give up these rights and want to be removed from the world government? Chapter 318 Rules? We have it too. Now the relationship between the faceless pirate group and the world government is as strong as water. To describe it is not overstated, and even many people suspect that the world government will send someone to sabotage the ceremony. Perhaps tens of thousands of naval forces have been quietly assembled ready to take action. It is a common belief that there must be spies from the world government hidden among the guests. They risked being targeted by the world government to come here because they were afraid of offending Faceless Will, and because they were naturally on the opposite side of the world government and the Navy, so even if this didn't happen today, it wouldn't be easy if they ran into each other in the future, so it didn't matter. But the Germa 66 is completely different from them. As a royal family recognized by the world government, they suddenly came to the territory of the four emperors, and it seemed that they had came to make friends. Isn't this digging a hole for themselves? Unless they are crazy or have a knife to their necks, no one will give up their current status and join a group of pirates, even if it's the four emperor. But that's what the Vinsmoke did, and they didn't shy away from the fact that they seemed to have made some kind of decision. Big News Morgans, who are extremely sensitive to big events, subconsciously took out his cameras and Dendenmushi and started taking pictures of the Vinsmoke family and their entourage, talking with excitement and enthusiasm. At this time, the grumpy red, blue and green had slowly walked up to the pirates who had just made a fool of themselves. Strangely dressed, strange eyebrows, and walking with a strange noise. Are you ducks here to be funny? Don't talk nonsense. They are the famous Germa 66. PFFT, no way, let me laugh for a while, ha ha ha. Hey, kid, are you guys here to perform in the circus? It's my birthday in a couple of days, can I invite you to perform? Just play your best Germa 66. That's a great idea. By the time we can let these Germa 66 on their knees and lick our shoes, maybe we'll be drawn into the comic. The group of pirates laughing extremely arrogant, standing in the forefront is a pirate with a bounty of 200 million, so how could he be afraid of a few brats? Or he was eager to stir up some trouble, as long as he could show that big shot his strength, he might be able to rise to the top. And Germa 66? Don't be ridiculous, kids these days don't believe in it. Then the pirates, who were laughing wildly with him, saw that the red, blue and green tricolored curly eyebrows were not angry at all, they just suddenly grinned, revealing their white, livid faces. Anyone who dares to insult the name Germa 66 will only end up in one place. And that is in hell. As the word hell fell to the ground, Akiji, who was the first to strike, burst into flames and engulfed everyone in front of him. Nijai, Yanji followed into the crowd, bursting into action and beating the pirate captain and his crew senseless. The human physique obtained after descent factor transformation coupled with Germa 66's specially tailored black technology combat suit, even without the devil fruit, their strength will not fall behind even against those monster sons and daughters of Big Mom in the short term. And with no such extra things as emotions, they are more like real combat weapons, where the mere 200 million bounty pirates can resist. Akiji, Nijai, and Yanji all knocked down the pirates in front of them without even trying. It was a total slaughter. It was such a blur that the winner was separated from the loser, and it was such an overwhelming difference in strength that it directly made those who didn't know about Germa 66 stare in disbelief. Now they want to believe that Germa 66 is real. There was a lot of commotion here, and soon Tesoro, who was in charge of everything, came over with the news. For whatever reason, this shouldn't happen in their turf. Tesoro, having made up his mind, stepped directly in front of the Vinsmoke group, and became the center of attention. Did you kill those idiots? He had already been told the cause and effect, and the identities of the guys in front of him had been identified. The name of Germa 66 did surprise him, but that was all. Even before he joined the Faceless Pirates he wasn't necessarily afraid of this former North Blue Sea overlord, let alone at this very moment. This is the price that must be paid by those who dare to insult the name Germa 66, and I apologize on behalf of the Vinsmoke family for the disturbance that has arisen. Vinsmoke Judge didn't think that Akiji and the others had done anything wrong, but for the purpose of this trip, he decided to give a little face to Faceless Will. Only that the face he gave, some people might not appreciate it. Really? So that's understandable. Then also please understand the rules here. Tesoro didn't even move, but with a look full of violence, he manipulated the gold around him and wrapped the red, blue and green eyebrow curls in it. All of them didn't expect that Tesoro would suddenly attack, and Akiji's reaction was a step too slow, and after the liquid gold had completely enveloped them, they were horrified that they couldn't break free. Neither the flames of Akiji the boss nor the electric shocks of Nidai nor Yanji are effective. Because the gold that was wrapped around them was liquid, and their attacks couldn't hit Tesoro, they would only leave themselves in a worse state. At the same time, the ignored judge and Reiju, who had been staying still, subconsciously took action, and they couldn't just stand by while the three were attacked. Let Akiji and the others go, what do you want? Smoke Judge's spear was stopped by Tesoro's golden fist, and Reiju's poisonous attack was blocked by the gold that seemed to be alive. Let them go? I'm sorry, I can't do that. The Smoke family has its own rules, and there are rules here, and you will naturally be punished for breaking the rules of the four emperors. If you want to continue to fight, I can accompany you, but you'd better think about the consequences of angering an emperor. Tesoro's words made Judge furious. He's a baron who can be arrogant to the point of being unstoppable in good times and at the same time a weak loser who sobs without dignity in bad times. So he's just an impotent man. Chapter 319 Judge Choice. If Smoke Judge really had the courage to go to war with the four emperors, he would not be standing here today. Power-hungry and desperate to recreate the former glory of Germa 66, he is nothing but an incompetent loser whose sons and daughters, whom he carefully transformed, are his victims. How could such a hypocritical, selfish guy continue to make the irrational choice to go to war? So he immediately put away his weapon and called back to Reiju, who was still trying to save her brothers. Father! Reiju shouted in puzzlement. Shut up, we don't have any chance of winning if we keep fighting. Judge annoyedly whispered. In the end, Germa 66's legions of clone soldiers were fine against those ordinary people, but against a top-tier power like the four emperors, no matter how many there were, they were just cannon fodder. Even if Akiji and the others were not caught in a surprise attack, once the cadres of the Faceless Pirates arrived, the only result that awaited them was still defeat. The resilient judge had to bite his tongue and say, I want to see the fourth emperor Faceless Lord Will. This time we Germa 66 came here specifically not for war, but for cooperation. Humphrey, cooperation? Are you trying to make a fool of yourself by coming here? What happened before was a misunderstanding, and what punishment the three brothers deserve will be according to the rules here. Judge didn't care at all about the feelings of his sons, and in fact, his sons didn't feel anything at all, and feelings are something they don't have at all. Only Reiju looked at her father with a complicated look, and then looked back at her three brothers whose expressions remained unchanged as if they had taken it for granted. As for the unbelievable, contemptuous, and slurring looks of the people around them, it was completely ignored by the emotionless Smoke fam. Oh no, Smoke Judge still has feelings, and is almost getting angry. Tesoro already didn't like Germa 66, and now he had even less affection for it, but he wasn't the one in charge here after all. So he directly pulled out the Denden Mushi and started to contact the person who can make the decision. When Will heard Tesoro's words, he couldn't help but feel that the plot had actually been messed up like this, and before Big Mom was ready to take action against Germa 66, the Smoke family actually took the initiative to came to him. As for the intentions of the Smoke family, Will felt that there could be no other possibility. The question now is whether he should accept Germa 66 as a collaborator, or simply follow the example of Big Mom to kill people and steal Germa 66's technology. To be honest, the black technology of the Germa 66 is quite impressive, and the talent of Smoke Judge, a former scientist, is not necessarily inferior, if not better than that of Bigapunk. After thinking about it, Will felt that they could meet one another, and since the meat was in the bowl anyway, it was up to him to decide how he wanted to eat it. Bring them all here, let me see their sincerity, and if I am not satisfied, use the demise of Germa 66 as a deterrent to those little rats in hiding. Tesoro already knew that Will was not a good person, but this was just more to his liking. If he really was a holier than a bitch, he would have stopped playing long ago. So the fierce smile on his face flashed, and then he let go of the three brothers with a fake smile on his face. Come with me, I don't know what to do with you, but I advise you to have no other ideas, because when you meet him, he may not be as easy to talk to as I am. Tesoro made a few light threats, and then turned around and left, not worrying about whether or not the Smoke would follow him. The three trapped brothers were still thinking of taking action, but they were stopped by Smoke Judge. Together, they might be able to defeat Tesoro, but then what? Can they withstand a counterattack from the Faceless Pirates? Moreover, the other party has already given them steps down, and the shackles that trapped the three have been untied, and now it looks like they are taking them to see the fourth Emperor Faceless Will, and if they escape at this time, then they would have traveled in vain and offended someone for nothing. Let's go. No one is to do anything else without my order. The three eager brothers immediately calmed down, and for them, Judge orders were still to be obeyed, but not because he was their father, but because Judge was the leader of Germa 66. This is important. With no more excitement, the crowd gradually dispersed, and the pirates who had fallen to the ground without knowing whether they were alive or dead, were cleaned up by the soldiers brought by Tesoro. Chapter 320 Submit or Die. To be honest, Will has never figured out why Big Mom has to go in such a big circle to annex Germa 66. Again, the marriage, and the design scam, and finally make such a big scene in the end. The results are almost funny. In the end, the strong still the one who makes judgments. To put it bluntly, these people from the Vinsmoke are not enough for Big Mom to use her 50% strength. As the leader of Germa 66, Judge was defeated by Big Mom without a fight, and even if the red, blue and green curly eyebrows brothers followed, they couldn't do anything to Big Mom. It's not even a fight anymore. So in the end, Will came to the conclusion that it's a big detour. Either Oda was trying to forcefully use Sanji origins to bring the Straw Hat Gang to Cake Island in a plot, leading to the rest of the story. Either that or Big Mom is up to something, and she wants a perfect ending, a gorgeous ending. Then screw it up. Either way, Germa 66 is not qualified to go head-to-head with any of the four emperors. Big Mom alone can beat the Vinsmoke family to death, and Will, who is studying how to kill her, can naturally do the same, and more handily. What's more, he doesn't have the leisure of Big Mom, and if these clowns get in his way, he doesn't mind killing them himself. So when Vinsmoke Judge still had the nerve to say the terms of cooperation, Will directly waved his hand. Cooperation? Don't make me laugh. Germa 66 has some value in my eyes, but to be a collaborator of the four emperors, you are not qualified. So I give you two ways to go. One is to join my service and serve me, and I will help you fulfill your ambitions. The second is to reject me and choose to become my enemy, and I don't have to tell you what the consequences will be, do I? In Will's eyes, the Vinsmoke family that came to his door was no different from the fat in the bowl, and he wasn't so sentimental as to not eat the meat and then give it to someone else. As soon as this was said, Judge immediately changed his face. He had envisioned many possibilities before coming here, but he had never thought that faceless Will would be so overbearing and not reason with him at all. He may have forgotten that the world is a place where the strong take all and that Germa 66 was just as unreasonable and even more so when it was big. The second way is to clearly force them to die. At this moment, Judge really regretted it. He overestimated the weight of the name Germa 66 and underestimated the true dominance and appetite of being a four-emperor. At this time, a compromise was a necessity. But the three brothers, who were deprived of their emotions at birth, are not afraid of the four emperors, and how can Germa 66 become someone else's subordinate force? So the three brothers exchanged glances and did it by surprise. No one thought they would dare to do it, but they did. Akiji, Nijai, Yanji. What are you doing? Get back here. Judge watched in shock as his three sons instantly turned on their battle suits and rushed over, as he shouted anxiously. If the four emperors can be attacked by them so easily, then it would not be considered a four emperors. In Will's eyes, the red, blue and green trio is simply a clown dancing in a circuit. Mixed color burst. Akiji, Nijai, and Yanji's proud combined technique struck Will, who seemed to have no reaction at all, but was sitting calmly on the throne. Boring. The heart-pounding white light wrapped Will's hand again, with only one punch, and a punch that didn't give his full strength, broke their combination skills like a bamboo, before the sound of clattering and shattering sharply rang out. Boom. Their incredibly sturdy combat suit is instantly shattered like ordinary glass. If it weren't for the special material made of combat suits that helped them withstand more than 90% of the damage, Will's punch would have shattered more than just a combat suit. From this point of view, the technology of the Germa 66 does have some power. Akiji, Nijai, Yanji. Judge was horrified at the scene before him, knowing full well that his kids couldn't possibly be a match for the four emperors, but to be defeated with just one punch, and to have their proud and exclusive battle suits beaten to a pulp, was too much of a blow. The difference in strength made him lose the courage to take action, and he just stood there and watched as Reiju ran off to check on the injuries of his three brothers. Don't worry, I'm not going to kill them until you make up your mind, unless they've just made a decision for you. At the end of the day, the invisible hockey of the conqueror begins to rage. Judge and Reiju felt as if they were carrying a mountain on their backs, their bodies instantly rickety, and at some point, cold sweat spread across their faces and was dripping down their bodies. At this point, the curly trio should feel lucky that they are already in a coma, as the mental stress is sometimes even more debilitating than the physical damage. Father. Reiju struggled to spit out the words, mentally oppressed by the tremendous pressure that gave her the illusion that she would be torn apart if she moved, and her bad premonition came true. Maybe it's not bad to die here just like this, Sanji. In the end, I didn't see you again, so please live well, completely abandon the surname of Vinsmoke and live under the name of Sanji. After hearing the sound, Judge glanced back at Reiju, who had completely fallen to the ground and was on the verge of a breakdown. He knew that his next words would completely determine the future destiny of his group. But the truth is he had no choice, and he didn't want to die. Germa 66 would like to join. The tyrannical authority that was almost about to congeal into substance dissipated in an instant. Their bodies were wet with sweat, but Raju and Judge didn't care about it as they immediately began to breathe fresh air, and the spirits that were about to collapse were recovered again. But the terrifying invincibility of the man in front of them had been deeply engraved in their minds, and could not be shaken off. A faint smile crept back into Will's face. Choose wisely, in the future, you will gain more than you lose, remember this. Chapter 321 Danger on the way. The easy subjugation of the Germa 66 made Will feel good. So much so that after Judge expressed his submission, he also got red, blue and green eyebrow curl group treatment, coupled with Germa 66's exclusive medical facilities. He believes it won't take long for these three to recover. It has to be said that the human born after improving the bloodline factor is indeed far from normal human body quality. But the Vinsmoke family, which relies on technology to fight, is not destined to have a high ceiling. The news of the integration of Germa 66 into the Faceless Pirates will be announced in passing at the upcoming founding ceremony, and you will be prepared to be removed from the world government. Also, I'm a person who doesn't like betrayal, so if you want to do something behind my back, you'd better not let me know, otherwise, you'll have to pay the price even if you hide in Raftel. In this regard, Judge has no choice but to walk down a dark road. In the future, Germa 66 will no longer be the royal family that can influence the world government to a certain extent, but will become the traitor that the world government regards as a thorn in its side. And they will be supported by the four emperors, so his dream of regaining the North Blue Sea hegemony seems no longer distant. But Germa 66, who has lost his autonomy, even if he becomes the overlord of the North Blue Sea again and completes his revenge, what is left for him? It's a debt that can't be settled now, and Judge can only hope that, as Will said, they will gain more than they lose in the future. As a genius scientist who once worked with Vegapunk, Judge has really done a lot of good research. Whether it's the re-improvement of the descent factor or the replica soldiers who never betray in spite of death, it's all a sight to behold. But what Will finds more interesting are the giant snails, swelling suppressing masks, and other equipment and tools that can navigate and cross the red line. High-tech combat suits that can attach effects such as poison, fire, electric shock, and strength are also worth a lot of money. It contains dozens of cutting-edge scientific and technological achievements developed by Germa 66, such as compression technology, memory metal, and propulsion jets. If it is not for the four emperors, Akiji and others in combat suits may even be able to fight against the strong like Kitakuri, Prospero, Daifuku, and Oven, and they will not lose in the short term. That's a bounty on 1,700,000,000 powerhouses. Without a battle suit, Vinsmoke Judge is as weak as a sick chicken, but once he puts on a battle suit, the sick chicken instantly becomes a fighter, a pirate version of Iron Man. The increase in power is not insignificant. But for Will, Redfield, and Isho, the battle suit becomes a bit of a rib, tasteless to eat and discarded without a pity. What Big Mom fancy on Germa 66 is only their cloning technology that only needs 5 years to mass produce a clone that can provide Big Mom with a very considerable amount of souls. When the clone army is transformed by Big Mom into a Homies army, Big Mom pirates will be a nightmare for millions of people. Only now it all belongs to Will. I think it's better for you to continue doing scientific and technological research than to fight and kill. After visiting the base of Germa 66, Will said very rudely. To this, Judge was speechless, unable to fight and unable to speak, as he is afraid to speak, and can only rely on silent response to barely maintain his life in this way. These scientific and technological achievements will continue to stay with you. If there is a need, I will notify you. Will's sudden change in attitude made Judge and Raju all stunned, having just almost killed them and ready to grab the technological achievements of Germa 66. Why now? Perhaps he saw their doubts. Will continued, now I have no other scientists under my command. Even if you hand over the research results to me, it would be a problem for me, and I don't like trouble, so I decided to give you a certain amount of trust. This. Although he doesn't know if Will was sincere or not, being able to keep the results of his research was all a matter of joy for Judge. It seems that now this result is not as bad as it seems. Even Raju, who had been observing Will, was confused. What was this person thinking? At the same time, countless shadows hidden beneath the surface of the sea are quietly making their way to the Golden Island. Chapter 322 Declaring War on Big Mom. The 3 days passed with no surprises, with Germa 66 as an example. Both the bigwigs of the Dark World and the vicious pirates all knew what to do and stayed on the island in accordance with the rules of the Faceless Will. The one who wanted to cause trouble didn't even appear. After all, no matter how arrogant these people are, they are nothing compared to the four emperors. On the contrary, The gifts Will received these days filled more than a dozen warehouses, which is simply scary. It was the Navy and the world government's inaction that surprised them all, wondering if the fierce reputation of Faceless Will was enough to frighten the celestial dragon from retaliating. Before they know it, the prestige of the Faceless Pirates has risen a notch. On this day, the magnificent Golden Isles had its biggest moment. On a tower built of gold, Will fell against the endless sprinkling of gold dust in the sky. Below the golden podium was Isho, dressed up Robin and others, all the core members of the Faceless Pirate group in attendance, waiting for the next scene that will be recorded in history. Even Violet's father, King Rico of the Kingdom of Dressrosa, was there in person. After all, Dressrosa can only follow Will's path to the darkness. The Vinsmoke family, who were successfully subdued, also sat quietly behind Isho and others, an arrangement that was so fanciful that many people wondered if Germa 66 had reached some kind of cooperation with the Faceless Will. The outer edges of the group were the ordinary guests who were somewhat famous and powerful, but that was all, hoping to make their faces familiar. On the premise that they all paid a large entrance fee, Will gave them the opportunity to show their faces. When the gold dust that enveloped the crowd finally spilled out, Will had a heartfelt smile on his face. To be honest, I don't care how many people will come today to witness a scene that will go down in history, nor do I care how many of you are spies sent by other forces. I don't care about any of that. When Will opened his mouth, he made millions of people gawk, and the speech that reached every corner through the loudspeaker was so uncomfortable in everyone's ears. Isn't today a happy day? Why was that Lord's statement so offensive? The Queen of the Pleasure District, Stussy, who is a member of Cypher Paul Agents 0, raised the corner of her mouth in disdain without anyone noticing, and then immediately returned to the same expression as the others. Go ahead and be cocky. I hope you will keep that attitude when countless warships surround this place in layers, instead of running away. Will's bombshell, however, is only now getting ready to drop. Before we officially establish the country, I want to announce something. Judge looked complicated. He thought that what Will should be about to say was the news of their Germa 66 being annexed, which made him bitter inside. But when he heard what Will said next, he immediately stared at him with his eyes gawking. From this moment on, the Faceless Pirates will officially declare war on the Big Mom Pirates until only one of us remains. Boom. This bombshell blows up millions of people. The horror on everyone's face could not be dispelled. One of the 4 emperors actually declared war on another 4 emperors. Is the Faceless Will crazy? Is there any hatred between Faceless Will and Big Mom that others don't know about? Shocked, puzzled, incredulous. To put it bluntly, this declaration of war by Faceless Will may very well change the world today once again. What will the other 4 emperors do when they learn of this news? What would be the Navy's and the world government's response? What will the end result be? Will he lose? Will he win? Or will both sides die together and be picked up by other forces? And what they couldn't figure out was why Faceless Will had to say it specifically on such an important occasion. Is Faceless Will so confident that he can take out the Big Mom Pirates even if he throws away his first-hand advantage? Crazy. Almost everyone went crazy because of Will's crisp and clear words. Morgans, who goes by the nickname Big News, have been thrilled beyond belief that today's trip was really worth it. They saw him take out his camera and then mushy and point it at the maddening figure on the golden podium, filming with almost frenzied enthusiasm. For newsmen, there is nothing more popular than a person like Faceless Will, who makes something big at every turn that will get the world's attention. Stussy, who has multiple identities, spilled her cup of tea in front of her in a rare moment of indiscretion, wanting to report the news to the 5 elders as soon as possible. Compared with the current timing, it is obvious that the moment when the Faceless Pirates attacked Imam, she could get even greater results. If they can fish from other troubled waters, then there is no doubt that the rule of the world government will be stable to despair, and the prestige of the Navy will reach its peak. But unfortunately, the arrow is in the air and has to go. If her information leads to the failure of the plan that is now being executed, and then the Faceless Pirates delay in taking action against Big Mom, then she will be the center of the ages. She can't afford to take the blame, nor does she dare to. People are selfish, and after thinking about it, Stussy just hinted to her deputy to report this information as soon as possible, but did not interfere more, so that in the end, no matter what their higher-up discussed, the outcome of the results of her work will be meritless. As for the underground kings and the others, they were now looking terribly pale. Faceless Will has suddenly made such a move, which is obviously forcing them to take sides. They would not be so naive as to think that Faceless Will would let them go so easily after declaring war. Then the question arises, should we deal with the problem with a false sense of humility, or simply take the side of Faceless Will and draw a clear line with Big Mom? But the option to oppose and betray Big Mom was eliminated from the very beginning by these people. In the end, the guy Dufeld, the king of loan sharks who chose not to show up, and escaped for a while, will definitely suffer the consequences. If the faceless pirates win, the king of loan sharks will completely become a thing of the past. And they believe it. Almost everyone present was thinking about where they were going to go in this confrontation, and for a time the good founding ceremony actually became the choice banquet. Chapter 323 Fear Me. Will, standing high up, had a good view of everyone's performance, including Pudding, who thought she hadn't shown her true colors and was in charge of some of the miscellaneous tasks during the nation-building ceremony. When Pudding heard the news, she dropped the plate she was carrying on the floor in her hand, disoriented. Fortunately, many people around her had similar behaviors, so she didn't seem surprised. Her mother Big Mom gave her tasks, but other than the first step, it has been going very poorly. She has not been able to win the trust of Will and others and has been doing the same work as the other servants. Originally, she had wanted to slowly gain the trust of Will and others, but Will's declaration of war declared her plan completely aborted. In other words, if she can't complete her mission before the faceless pirates strike, she will be a complete failure and will have lost her mother's trust in her completely. And that's something she can't tolerate under any circumstances. It was at this moment that Pudding, who had come back to her senses, made the decision that she was going to turn the tide and become the child that her mother truly loved the most. Will didn't make any statement about the noisy and chaotic crowd below but only smiled in anticipation. From the moment these people stepped on the island, their fate was no longer in their hands. That beautiful and intoxicating gold dust can sometimes be a murderous weapon and an unbreakable time bomb. Will finally showed his fangs. Tesoro was also satisfied with his masterpiece. But at that very moment, Lucci, who could not wait any longer, gave the order to attack as soon as the encirclement was formed. Nearly 40 ferocious warships made entirely of steel suddenly appeared on the sea around the Golden Island. The information that Stussy had reported was just passed to the 5 elders, but the arrow had already been shot out. Navy. Oh my god. How many warships are these? Red alert. Run. Just as Whitebeard took the Navy by surprise, the Navy now took the faceless pirates by surprise, and all warning circles were rendered useless, and the siege was formed the moment the ships surfaced with their coatings. 4 times the strength of the Buster Call, the Yellow Ape, the Pink Rabbit, and the Green Bull. There are also 21 vice admirals from the Navy, and they all came together this time. In addition, there were countless rear admirals, a full 40,000 naval troops. The most striking one is the steel monster with a chilling feeling all over its body, which is a knockoff version of the Pluto created according to the nerfed version of the blueprint given by Will. After installing a high-tech fire control system developed by Vegapunk, the steel monster once again appeared on Earth as a credential and a deterrent for Lucci and the other supervisors. The reason for bringing out this killer weapon so early is that perhaps the world government also wants to take this opportunity to experiment with how much combat power the Pluto they create can wield in the field, providing valuable scientific research data for the future Pluto. There are riots on the Golden Island. Even Will, who was always indifferent, frowned. This was not in his script. At this moment, he could fly directly to the sky and leave with the Golden Island, but he couldn't do that, otherwise, the big words that he had released before would completely become a joke. The world government and Navy chose this day to do it, perhaps because they knew that he would never run away without doing anything. Once he did that, his reputation as the 4th Emperor would be completely infamous, and he would become the laughingstock of the world, not to mention the admirable example of Whitebeard, who never retreats from a fight. So no matter what, he can't retreat today, and if he does, he loses. Will, who made his decision in just a split second, laughed out loud. What's all the panic? It's just a congratulatory gift. Will's words, which could not be described as confident or arrogant, were heard over the loudspeaker. Yes, even if you are surrounded, what can you do? How can the 4 emperors be so easy to deal with, let alone in the camp of the 4 emperors? It's not certain who will win or lose. The commotion gradually came to a halt, and although the fear was still visible on their faces, at least they weren't scared out of their wits. And the moment Will's voice fell, a full 40 naval ships opened fire in silence. No unnecessary nonsense, no proclamations, just a surprise, and it's especially important how much success this first offensive can achieve. The shells appeared like locusts overhead, and many people had a look of despair in their eyes. But Will is indifferent because it doesn't require him to do anything. As early as the moment the warship appeared, Tesoro's face was smiling with excitement that on an island filled with gold, he could wield 200% of his power. The number of shells may be large, but they are no match for the amount of gold he has. I'm the Golden Emperor, you bastard. The gold on the entire island became an extension of his body, and as the cannonballs were falling from the sky, an incomparably hard gold protective shield was raised over everyone. Boom boom. An artillery attack 4 times the size of the Buster Call resounded in the sky, but it could not cause the slightest harm to the people on the island. Gold is not the hardest of metals, but it would take more than 1 or 2 waves of artillery fire to shatter all of this gold in the home turf of the Golden Emperor, Tesoro. It's just that the forces surrounding the Golden Isles this time aren't just the 40 ships, but also the 3 Admiral plus 20 Vice Admiral are ready to attack. Once Kizaru and the others strike, even Tesoro at his home field will not be able to withstand it. So taking advantage of the gap after the 3 waves of cannon fire attacked, Will directly asked Tesoro to remove the golden shield and then flew into the air himself. Ever since he got the magnetic devil fruit of Kid, he had been working towards a vision, and now it was time for these people to feel what it meant to be afraid. On Will's infinity gauntlet, the 3 devil fruits lit up in sequence. Feel the breath of the real Magneto. They saw Will lift his hands into the void in front of them, and 40 warships, including the infamous rip-off Pluto, were all caught up in the air like toys. Numerous navies were trembling in fear, wondering what the hell was going on. I've warned you too many times, but you still choose to go against me, so blame those who sent you here to die. Chapter 324 Magneto of the Pirate World. When Magneto learned the unified field theory and could manipulate gravity, he was able to do almost anything, changing the magnetic fields of mountains and rivers to move mountains and seas and even changing the magnetic field of the Earth. This is the original setting for Magneto in the comics. Let's not talk about the part of how he became in the movie. Everything is under his control, so it's truly worthy of the title Magneto. And when Will used the Thunder Devil fruit, the magnet fruit, and the gravitational fruit in his hands, he had been trying to complete the idea that when these 3 devil fruits were combined together, would they be able to recreate Magneto's power? The road of ability integration has not been smooth until recently after he visited the electromagnetic weapon of Germa 66 and Vince Judge's conception of the magnetic field, and suddenly found the way forward. With the theory and practice of the electromagnetic cannon and the scientific research of Germa 66, he has finally mastered a part of Magneto's power. Although physically limited by his inability to control much of the magnetic field, where there is metal, he feels like a god. Yes, God. Don't panic, fire. Aim at the target and don't be afraid. The frightened navy that was suddenly pulled up with the warships to a height of several hundred meters, barely found their backbone when the admirals ordered them to take control of the cannons, shivering and gulping. However, Will only laughed lightly, and with a thought, all the cannons on the warship were wrenched into a twisted mass of scrap metal. While the navies were completely overwhelmed, Kizaru, who did not want to fight the faceless pirates, took action, and he could not just stand by and watch the future of these navies die. Don't let him continue to take action. The admirals and above can follow me to restrict the enemy, the rest of you will provide long-range support. Before the words were over, more than a dozen figures flew out with Kizaru's flash with Moon Step, and some vice admirals pulled out their sabers and tried to harass Will with slashes and buy time for their companions. After all, although they can move in the air, it is not fast. In the blink of an eye, Will became the target of everyone's fire. But he didn't panic at all and even flipped his finger before Kizaru arrived, and all of a sudden all of the ships became a scrap of iron, and countless navy ships were falling like dumplings from hundreds of meters into the sea in fear and despair. Will laughed at himself. He didn't think that in the end, he was not able to kill all those navy, from several hundred meters height to fall into the sea. With the physical quality of these naval elite soldiers, they may not necessarily die, and he also gave the navy a chance to save themselves, but in the end, how many people can survive is not his consideration. After all, he couldn't be merciful every time they stood hostile. Kizaru has not yet flown to Will's side to see this reversal scene. He only hesitated for an instant, sighed and flew back. He singled out the other side without the slightest certainty. At most, he can only stall for time, rather than doing useless work. To save a few more people is also considered to try. Surprisingly, he did not resent Will's actions at this moment, because he was not qualified to ask Will to show mercy to the enemy, which was stupid. Help. Needless to say, the Navy, which can protect itself, has begun to show its magical powers to save people, but it is only a drop in the bucket. Just then, the Green Bull looked up at the sky and said, "It's a nice day again." After saying that, the dense seeds were thrown out with great force, and then the moment they hit the water, green light shone brightly, and one by one, plants with huge fluffy leaves emerged from the water. The Navy, which had been waiting to die, was surprised to find that they were fine after falling in, but their blood was a little stirred up, and they nearly wept with joy at their survival. However, with the exception of the lucky few, those who were not saved fell into the sea like dumplings, and it is still unknown how many survived. Will only showed his unprecedented ability and immediately destroyed the Navy's huge force, causing unimaginable losses that neither the Navy nor the world government had expected before sending them. Gr. Crack. Strange sounds rang out in the sky, and the rescued Navy, whose minds had completely calmed down from the commotion, raised their heads to look. Under the influence of the unknown force, The 40 warships and the steel monster that was completely deactivated before firing a single shot were like a ball of soft dough that was slowly bent and deformed and finally turned into a ball of iron as Will's hands gripped it tightly. The cost of each warship is not cheap, plus the almost astronomical price of the nerfed version of Pluto. Will this time really bring unimaginable disaster to the Navy and the world government, both in terms of personnel and economy, and there may be many people who want to die after today. This scene is simply stunning. The Navy's killing weapon became an inferior toy in front of Will, and the crowd on the Golden Island was like watching a miracle, their eyes all focused on the proud figure in the sky in awe. With his own efforts, he had defeated a naval force 4 times the size of the Buster Call, led by 3 admirals. It would have been hard for the other 3 emperors to do that. At this moment, the idea that Faceless Will was perhaps the strongest of the 4 emperors began to take root in everyone's heads. No wonder he dared to so arrogantly and directly declare war on another 4 emperor. That confidence should come from this near-invincible strength. Many people have already given Will a reason for doing this, and Morgans, who has been filming, is even more excited and trembling, repeating big news, "This is the big news I've been dreaming of." All the while. But now Lucci, who had escaped with the moon step, was staring with red eyes, knowing without thinking that he would be punished in the most horrible way even if he made it back alive. The Pluto warship, which was given to him because of trust, was destroyed like this. The ancient weaponry that the world government has been pinning great hopes on was so vulnerable to that man. It was crumpled into a ball of scrap metal without even firing a single shot, so how was he going to explain this to the 5 elders when he returned? What exactly is this capability? Is the information they worked so hard to compile out of date again? Faceless Will, what kind of monster are you, and do I, Rob Lucci, really want to live under your nightmare for the rest of my life? I'm not convinced. Chapter 325 The Beginning of the Great Battle. No one expected that the first to erupt was actually Will's first defeated enemy, Rob Lucci. When the transformed Lucci stormed in front of Will with his moon steps, the blood in his body was boiling. Here he is, defeating the man who has become the 4th emperor, washing away his shame, exorcising the nightmare in his heart, and proving to the world that he is the strongest genius in the 8 years of the world government. 6 King Gun. The 6 King Gun, which is dozens of times more powerful than the 6 King's gun, is the most powerful move he has ever made. Die. Lucci's fierce punch, which contained all his anger and humiliation, hit Will with pinpoint accuracy. Dumb. But instead of Will, it's Lucci who got hurt. And instead of Will, it's as if he hit a wall. Lucci's eyes were filled with disbelief as he flew backwards with the sound of his bones breaking and as he spits blood, and in the blink of an eye, he smashed into the sea from the air, setting off a huge splash of water. And Will hadn't moved from the beginning to the end, he just gave Lucci a faint look when he flew out, and then withdrew his eyes indifferently. At this time, Lucci had been completely left behind by him, and he didn't even have the desire to take another look at him, much less to take him under his wing. The deal had been set after Lucci rejected his invitation outright. It was true that Lucci had gotten a lot stronger, but he was definitely stronger, and they are not even on the same level. All kidding aside, Magneto once used this move to withstand a nuclear blast. The magnetic field shield Will had constructed at this time was not yet at this level, but it was by no means something Lucci could break. The force of the backlash alone shattered the full force of Lucci's arm, severely wounding him. But at this time, Lucci should have completed the Devil Fruit Awakening, and with the self-healing ability of the Zone Devil Fruit Awakening, he should not die from this alone, provided that someone hurriedly rescues him from the sea. This guy's getting stronger again. Kizaru and others who witnessed the scene looked very bad, although Lucci is the world government sent to monitor the army, but his strength is still heard of, the power contained in the hit just now, even they may not dare to take it hard, the result. But even the invisible shield of the opponent was easily blocked, but instead, Lucci himself was seriously injured and was sent flying into the sea. The length of this growth is simply maddening. Kizaru couldn't help but focus on the pink rabbit and green bull, with a clear meaning in his eyes. How did you two manage to get out alive from this kind of monster last time? After the last Sabati incident, Pink Rabbit and Green Bull reports gave hope to many, and it could be argued that it was the Pink Rabbit and Green Bull's assessment of that war that made the world government choose to step in and deny the Navy its last chance to refuse. Only now, does it really seem that way? Both Pink Rabbit and Green Bull had a heavy look in their eyes, an ability that hadn't been used against them last time, and no one knew where this man's limits were. Green Bull Admiral felt that the last battle in the Sabati Islands might not be a reference. The real key point should be the woman beside him, who was as cold as ice. In the end, Will's killing intent was really to kill him, but his special ability spared him in the end. There must be some secret between these two. But for some reason, after going back, Green Bull kept quiet about it, so that Pink Rabbit still didn't realize that the secret she was hiding in her heart was in danger of leaking out. At that moment, Will casually cancelled the control of the scrapped warships, leaving them in free fall, while the numerous navies below had just been saved. This time, Kizaru did not need to remind them. All kinds of attacks towards the free fall of the scrapped warships began to bombard. Kizaru's laser became a straw, shooting fast, wide range. The power is not weak, and soon cleared one after another iron nodules. Others also had to spend a lot of physical strength to split it open with a decapitation. Among them, besides Kizaru, the most striking was actually the naval headquarters Captain Shu, whose rusty fruit was exerted to great effect. Ashore, quickly. Although it was far from the original plan, the navy, which had lost its mobility, could only continue to fight, but their location was not far from the Golden Island. The three admirals, who had finally freed their hands, were about to attack Will, but Redfield, Isho, and the others had been waiting for a long time. If their showy captain had left them with nothing to do, they would have just faced not just Will alone, but the entire high end of the faceless pirate group. Seeing this, Will also laughed. His limelight had finished, and now it was someone else's turn. So he directly fell from the sky and said loudly, "Faceless pirate group, attack." "Hey, looks like you're trying to compete with me?" Redfield stared directly at Kizaru, who had attacked them in Manaford, and stopped the man with a flash. Redfield's strength was definitely not something he could deal with after being distracted, and it looked like the opponent had found a way to return to his youth completely, which was not good news for him, or even for the entire navy. In addition to the instantaneous pair, Isho and Tesoro also came before Green Bull and Pink Rabbit. "You're the co-captain, you pick first." Tesoro made a rare acceptance, but the expression on his face was so eager that he actually wanted to engage the admiral for a long time. With a relaxed look and a smile on his face, Isho said, "In that case, I'm sorry, but I'm not good at dealing with women, so could the other one be handed over to me?" Tesoro laughed at the words. "Then leave this beautiful lady to me. I will not show mercy just because my enemy is a man or a woman." In a few words, the Green Bull and Pink Rabbit were assigned their opponents, and then the only thing they heard was the Green Bull jumping out of the conversation saying, "Hey, hey, hey, don't we have the right to pick our opponents? I want a pretty lady." "I'm afraid that's not possible. If the captain hears this he'll probably be very angry, so please cooperate." As soon as the words were out of his mouth, Isho drew his sword and a furious strike of the gravity blade Fierce Tiger separated the two, and along with it also set off thousands of navies behind him, making Tesoro couldn't help but look at him twice. "I knew it. A guy who can be a vice captain to that monster can't be a simple guy. You're flattering me, so I'll go ahead." After saying that, with a smile, Isho added a weightless effect to himself and flew to Green Bull. Tesoro laughed wildly twice, and also confidently maneuvered the Golden Ocean towards the Pink Rabbit to catch up. A war is coming to a climax. Chapter 326 Coercion and Bait. Let's go, brothers. Kill. Give those idiotic navies a run for their money. Vow to follow Lord Will to the death. After Law, Bartolomeo, and Kobial led their men to fight the navy ashore, many of them made the final decision to try to join the Faceless Will with this declaration of allegiance. After a little hesitation, Vinsmoke Judge immediately joined the battlefield with the Vinsmoke family and Germa 66's clone regiment. And the situation is instantly reversed. As the fourth emperor, Will didn't even need to do it himself anymore to take care of the navy that was coming to attack. If the base camp of the four emperors was so easy to attack, the navy would have settled the sea long ago, and there wouldn't have been so many plots and tricks. And the sneak attack plan against the faceless pirates could have been declared a complete failure at this point. But with the loss of the ships as naval mobility, they had to fight through a battle they had no chance of winning. Will was right, it was indeed a congratulatory gift for him. "Gentlemen, did you enjoy the show?" Will, who didn't even need to do it himself, came directly in front of his guests and others, and then sat down and drank by himself without any problem. Except for Morgans, who was still shouting big news and great with an excited face, everyone else was silent. Will didn't care either, he just said to himself after putting down his glass, "I know some of you have a good relationship with Big Mom, but there's no need to risk your life for a dying woman, am I right? There is light and then there is darkness." Will is not the kind of naive guy, so he decided to take this power into his own hands. After all, even the people of the underworld have their own bottom line, so why can't he set the rules? So his message is clear, either they take it under his wing, or they die now. All the people present were the best of the best, so they all understood the meaning of Will's words, and their faces turned ugly all of a sudden. To put it plainly, this banquet is forcing them to make a choice, and it's a choice without a second option. They are not like those mud-legged pirates, without even thinking about the consequences and helping the faceless pirate group to face the navy, fighting to the death just to please others like a dog. As the leaders in all walks of life in the underworld and even the leading bosses, how could they be willing to be subdued? Big Mom holds a tea party every year. At most they will attend it with a gift, but Faceless Will is more overbearing than Big Mom, and doesn't give them a chance to refuse. Amit, the shipping magnate, frowned and asked, "We are just trying to make a living and have no intention of participating in the battle between the four emperors." Among all the people present, the shipping king Amit is the most powerful one. Just think about it, to be able to do the business of sea transportation on the chaotic sea and pirate-ridden sea, and also to do a dominant business, how can one rely on luck? In terms of the number of his men and their fighting power alone, the rest of the people here combined would not necessarily be his match. Deep connections and powerful guards have made him the man he is today. How could he willingly be co-opted to attack another four emperors? It's not surprising that Will is not surprised by this. If it's so easy to subdue these people who are crawling in the underworld, then they wouldn't last long in this pirate world. But to subdue these guys is nothing more than 4 words: coercion and bait. Will doesn't have the patience to play sincere with them, which is fine to deceive the hot-blooded youths who have just entered the society, but to face these old fogies is simply insulting them as well as himself. So he just said, "I don't think that guy Dufeld is coming, right?" "Yes, I think he wouldn't dare to come either. When I first entered the New World, he helped Doflamingo ambush me, and I've always kept this step in my heart, so it won't be long before I uproot his loan sharking power. I still have part of the list, and I heard that there were a lot of people who gave help to Doflamingo at that time. TSK, everyone knows what they have done in their heart, and it is not good to say it. But even without saying it, those people he was talking about of course have their faces changed color from red to white. I'm still very vindictive and I don't care what will happen to those people who become my enemy. After I accept the gift from the Navy, I hope to hear an answer that will satisfy me, otherwise, the underworld is the least you should worry about from now on. It's more resulting if things are in your hand after all. What do you guys think?" After speaking, Will ignored these people and turned his head to focus on the battlefield. The faces of those king of the underworld and the others were unpredictable, and then they sat down on their chairs and began to weigh the pros and cons. In fact, there was nothing to think about. Instead, Stussy eyes flashes and the corners of her mouth evoked a charming smile. If she can take this opportunity to infiltrate the Faceless Pirates group, it seems quite good. Every piece of information about the Faceless Pirates focuses on the big and small beauties on the ship. So Stussy feels that she has a great advantage in this task. She is the queen of the pleasure district in the underground world, so this job is convenient for her. Maybe the world government will rely on her to break the line of defense of the Faceless Pirates. Anyway, those useless navy can't be counted at all, and in the end, she has to rely on her skills and beauty. Stussy looks at the chaotic battlefield with disdain. And saw the 3 admirals fighting the cadres of Faceless Pirates with difficulty. She knows very well that the moment when Faceless Will made a move, it was the beginning of the defeat of the navies. Stussy was right, but what she didn't know was that her identity was completely exposed to Will's sight from the very beginning. It was just unnecessary to expose her. In other words, Will also use Stussy's identity as Cypher Paul Agent 0 to confuse the world government and even asked her to provide wrong information at some critical moments, and maybe it will be of great use. Thinking of the natural intelligence advantage he possesses, Will couldn't help but want to send a great gift to the world government. Chapter 327 The Defenseless Sheep. Although they knew that several cadres of the Faceless Pirates were very strong, but to single-handedly and directly stop the 3 admirals of the Navy was still unexpected to many. Originally, Kizaru was going to join forces with Pink Rabbit and Green Bull, who claimed in the last report to be able to restrain Will, to directly preoccupy Will first, and the rest of them to pester the cadres of the Faceless Pirates, plus a baptism of fire that appeared, could definitely hit the Faceless Pirates hard. However, they don't know if the heavens weren't on the Navy's side, but it all went to shit right from the start. Not only was the attack ineffective, but all 40 ships were destroyed, and the elite Navy suffered heavy casualties, throwing the plan completely out of whack in one fell swoop. The battle that followed was even more brutal, with a large number of navies bleeding to death at every moment, while their top warriors were being dragged to their death and even losing the battle. At this time, Kizaru's face was incomparably ugly, and Redfield, who had recovered from his peak and eaten the devil's fruit, could be said to have been crushing him. Kizaru has always been proud of the degree of advantage in his speed, but in Redfield's eyes his speed is a joke. With Redfield mastery of observation hockey and with his vampire devil fruit, Kizaru's speed in his eyes is just a joke. Most outsiders can only see a golden flash of light and a bright red line of blood in a violent collision. And Redfield observation hockey mastery to the peak can be described as the last straw that overwhelms the balance. Kizaru did not lose quickly, but he already used his full strength. It might be argued that it wasn't really Redfield stopping Kizaru now, but rather Kizaru pestering Redfield to keep him from supporting the rest of the battlefield. As for the other two sides, although the fight between Isho and Green Bull was fierce enough, neither of them had any murderous intent, and their strengths were similar, so it was a draw, and it would be realistic to have several days and nights to decide the winner. Tesoro, who had long been warned by Will of his opponent's bizarre abilities, also directly awakened his devil fruit ability and transformed into a golden giant, not giving the giant any chance to cast the mist of desire. Tesoro, who wrapped his entire body firmly in gold, was simply a rascal, not giving any chance. The angry giant could only curse through her gritted teeth. After all, her strength is not based on direct attack power. And they can't drag on any longer. You know the opponent's trump card, as the 4 Emperor Faceless Will has yet to play. Giant, who at first wanted to conserve her energy to deal with Will, became anxious after Tesoro suffered a few losses and started to play it safe. The key to victory, the Mist of Desire, has always been on the opponent's card, plus this is the opponent's home field, with plenty of gold as a weapon. As long as it continues to drag on, that will do. And that's exactly what Giant can't tolerate. So she decisively disengaged from the battlefield and began releasing the Mist of Desire on a wide scale. The golden giant transformed into an indestructible tortoiseshell, but again, in this state, it's unrealistic for Tesoro to firmly entangle Giant, and it's unimaginable what Giant's bizarre abilities can do on this chaotic battlefield. The desire to kill. With a squeal from the giant, Tesoro saw all who were tainted by this pink fog of desire stared at each other with red eyes, and they were dominated by it. Although Giant can't be manipulated too finely, it's enough to let the pirates kill each other. This took a lot of pressure off the Navy. For even vicious pirates hesitate subconsciously when confronted by a fellow pirate with a raised steel blade, while those blinded by the desire to kill have no such qualms. What's more, after the great increase in strength, Giant's control over the fruit of desire was also taken to the next level, and the Mist of Desire was like a living being that distinguished between the Navy and the enemy, truly making no mistake. The pirates, caught in the chaos, began to crumble under the unified attack of the regrouped Navy. During this time, Tesoro repeatedly tried to drag Giant back into the fight with powerful attacks such as Golden Fire, but the nimble Giant kept digging into the crowded enemy area, which made Tesoro restrain his hands and feet and let further spread the fog of desire so that more people are recruited by Giant. Witnessing how those pirates became an enemy, a fierce flash of color on the unseen face of Tesoro flushed cruelly. Well, let's see who can do it better. Golden God Fire. Laser beam after laser beam came out of the eyes of the tall golden giant, causing heavy casualties to the Navy and causing the formation to fall apart once again. However, Tesoro was not satisfied with his results, so he went straight with the big move Golden Divine Punishment. This was Tesoro's strongest attack in his awakened state, and the missile heads, which were clustered into countless golden pillars, were blasted towards the naval camp. When the Golden Emperor with his pseudo-admiral strength unleashed his wrath on these so-called naval elites, the devastation it could cause was terrifying. Even the Admiral of the Navy wouldn't dare to take these golden missiles head-on, let alone the other navies. Although Giant inflicted great damage on the pirates on Will's side, Tesoro gave the Navy a good beating, and the battlefield was filled with blood. This is the price that is paid when the strong are determined to slaughter the weak. Pink Rabbit, don't get carried away, face him. Kizaru is going crazy. If these 40,000 naval elite were to be wiped out here, the Navy would be hit hard with an unimaginable blow. When they try to shift their focus to the New World, it means that as soon as they show their decline, countless sharks will come up smelling blood and drive them out once and for all. That would mean that the war on top was for nothing. If the warship hadn't been sabotaged, if their plan would have failed, then they would have been able to evacuate, but how do they leave now? Then Kizaru suddenly set his eyes on those pirate ships docked around the island. At that moment, Giant, who was clenching her teeth to get back to hammering Tesoro's golden body, was suddenly horrified to find herself caught by an invisible force. Then she heard a voice in the distance that brought the hearts of the Navy down to rock bottom. Enough of this nonsense. Today is a memorable day, and I've already accepted the Navy's congratulations, so please behave yourselves now. After imprisoning Giant with a magnetic field, Will gently hooked his finger, and Giant was seized by him with a swish. This farce. Time to end it. Swish. The Navy, who were still resisting, felt a huge force in their hands, and then their swords and guns were pulled into the air. The elite Navy has suddenly become defenseless sheep. Chapter 328 Admiral Kizaru's Death. Countless weapons were sucked away by Will, forming a huge sphere in the sky. The Navy that didn't want to give up their weapons could only scream after being taken into the sky, and then let go. The bewildered Navy, facing the pirates with bloodthirsty expressions, subconsciously began to retreat, and it was already an unfair fight. Even those vice-admirals of the Navy headquarters who were not bad, after losing their swords in their hands, their strength dropped by at least half. After all, The only naval forces that rely mainly on fists are Sengoku, Garp and the former Black Fist Zephyr. How can they fight when everyone else relies on either devil fruit abilities or weapons to fight? The Cypher Paul agents Zero's agents have been wiped out, and now they don't know where they are hiding. Are they going to be left here completely? The surprisingly serious-looking Kizaru immediately shouted, "Listen up, all navies. Everyone take the ship and retreat immediately. Take the ship. Retreat?" What an unexpected irony that those pirate ships docked on the shore were their last straw. But now they can't worry about that anymore. They've lost the battle already, and they can only run away one by one. It's better than total annihilation. And when the pirates heard that the navy was about to run, and they still wanted to run away with their ships, they immediately screamed and rushed up. Usually it's the navy chasing them everywhere, but today they finally turned the tables. The army is in defeat. Many vice admirals have had enough of it. What a shame for the navy that thousands of elite naval personnel were chased and hacked to death by some weakling. Major General and above, whoever wishes, fights them with me. It's no good running away. And then a few unarmed vice admirals silently stepped forward. Just like in the war on the top, Whitebeard was willing to sacrifice himself for his sons and daughters behind him, and now it was their turn to fight for the lives of those brats. Jian was controlled by will from a distance and couldn't escape, and Tesoro, who had lost his opponent, was about to start a massacre, but he heard another order. He had no choice but to curl his lips to hold back the brutal killing intent in his heart, and then, as Will ordered, he controlled the ocean of gold to capture one navy after another. From now on, catch them alive. I don't need disobedient men. Will's faint words made the pirates who were about to kill the marine in front of them feel a throb in their hearts. They had already completely offended the navy and the world government, even counting Big Mom who had they declared war. If they lost the chance to join the faceless pirate group again, then what was waiting for them would definitely not be a good end. And that Lord's words have made them overjoyed. Does the fact that he doesn't need a disobedient subordinate mean that if they obey, they have a chance to become that Lord's subordinate? So one by one, the raised steel blade turned into the back of the blade as it fell, knocking down the fleeing navies. The vice admirals of the navy were determined to break free from the pirates that were tailing them like a shark smelling their blood, but they lacked the strength to make a final word like Whitebeard, but their efforts were not in vain. The navy near the shore had already grabbed the ship, which provided an opportunity for the evacuation of the follow-up troops. On the other side, Kizaru was still pressed and beaten by Redfield, but Green Bull put up a fighting posture after a confrontation with Isho. It's over. Now I'm going to rescue people, so if you still want to stop me, just do it. Just after saying it, Green Bull didn't care what Isho was thinking, he turned around and walked away. After a slight silence, Isho sighed in his heart and put away his blade. There was no right or wrong in this battle, just different positions, but it was really unnecessary to go on at this point, and it would be good to kill less. So Isho chose to stand idly by, because Green Bull was there to save lives, not to attack. If you and I were both in the Navy, we might have become real friends, unfortunately. The addition of Green Bull reduced the pressure on the vice admirals who were responsible for the breakaway, and the defensive line he had constructed made it futile for the pirates to pursue. But he remembered his agreement with Isho, and only defended to save the others, never attacking any of them again. Will floating in the air has a panoramic view of everything. Even though he had the ability to stop the Navy from leaving here, he couldn't convince himself to do so. Up to now, he had taught the Navy enough lessons, and they were bloody lessons. After today, the Navy would be severely wounded, and the prestige it had built up from the war would soon be gone. But the Navy could not be destroyed, since the world would be in complete chaos without it. So he can hit, and he can hurt them, but he must not kill all of them. And the Navy did send him congratulatory gifts. Yes, these prisoners, the Navy could have gained him a considerable amount of money in return, and now this little loss is completely worthless. He also wasn't worried about the money because he didn't think that people like Aokiji and Sengoku wouldn't care about the lives of these guys. So, he just ignored them with a smile and let them retreat at the critical moment. It was over after all. Just at that moment, a loud rumbling sound. All they saw was a familiar flash of light from the sky that hit the ground hard. When the smoke cleared, Kizaru with a hole in its abdomen and bloodied body was struggling to get up from the pain. Countless people sucked in a breath of cold air, and then looked with eyes full of awe at Redfield, who was slowly falling from the sky. How strong is the faceless band of pirates? Anyone can actually defeat an admiral. It's unbelievable, really unbelievable. But Will, who knows all about Redfield route, doesn't think there is anything to be amazed at. When Redfield was young, he was famous in the sea, and Kaido, Big Mom were only crew members on the Rocks Pirates at that time. If it wasn't for the fact that he was imprisoned in the Impel Down and deserted for so many years, coupled with the fact that Redfield has always been a loner and doesn't build up any influence, otherwise how could there be the 4 emperors? Now that Redfield is back at the top of his game, back to his youthful state, and with the precious vampire fruit of the mythical type. So how could a crippled Kizaru who relied heavily on his devil fruit power be a match for Redfield? Rather, it was already somewhat impressive to will for Kizaru to be able to hold off with his injury for so long. Just for the navies who had always regarded the Admiral as a pillar of support, this scene was no less than the sky falling. Everyone retreat. Kizaru, who had been stabbed by Redfield with a special umbrella, gave a final order to the crowd. Then he released a maximum range of Yasukani no Magatama towards the pursuing pirates, trying to buy time for everyone. Admiral Kizaru. Quite a few navies had red eyes as they shouted desperately. Chapter 329 Dragon Exterminator. Kizaru's sudden explosion caused great damage to the pursuing pirates, and the vice-admirals, who had been determined to stay behind, immediately pulled out with their teeth clenched, not disappointing what Kizaru had done for them. But with Tesoro and others pursuing them tightly, it is not realistic to want everyone to retreat. So when Kizaru was again beaten by Redfield and flew out spitting blood, many of them stopped with determined eyes and turned back to kill again. Admiral Kizaru, leave us alone and lead the men away. The future of the Navy cannot be buried here. Admiral Green Bull, you should go too, before it's too late. Green Bull gave them a deep look, then cancelled the protectorate used for defense and turned around, without a moment's delay. It wasn't that he couldn't continue to resist the enemy's attacks, but he also knew that he alone couldn't block the concentrated attack of the faceless pirate group and that he would be left behind completely, so now was not the time to be a hero. Kizaru also knew that it would be too late, so after pushing Redfield back, he immediately flashed to the ship. All troops retreat, immediately, retreat. All the navies who heard his order froze, but Admiral Pink Rabbit, Vice Admiral Bastille, they are still on the island. I said retreat, leave now, do you understand? Kizaru's face was gloomy, and the blood on his abdomen was still spurting out. He didn't want to leave the others behind if he could, but if he didn't leave now, even they wouldn't be able to escape. The battle power of the faceless pirates was seriously underestimated, and their three admirals together couldn't even touch the corner of Faceless Will's coat, and they were stalked by the others, which would be appalling if word got out. The eyes of the navies who heard the order turned red, but they also knew that the trade-off had to be made now and that if they delayed any longer, no one would be able to leave. So, the navies took control of the pirate ships they had stolen and sailed away from the shore. But no one took it lightly. At this distance, the faceless pirates could easily send someone after them, and at the end, how many of them would be left alive was anybody's guess. Redfield, who had let Kizaru escape, looked at Will and asked him with his eyes if he wanted to continue the pursuit, as it was not impossible to stop the escaping navy with both his level and Will's unimaginable ability to do so. Not to mention, now Will only needs to fly up into the sky and punch the sea with all his might. A huge tsunami will be able to drown all these navies, and the killing power that the quake fruit can cause under such circumstances is extremely terrifying. But do we really have to do this? Will subconsciously moved his right hand, which was wearing an infinity glove, a bit indecisive. Should he be the dreaded Demon King, or should he keep his bottom line and save the seeds of justice for the world? At that moment, Isho, sensing that the atmosphere was not right, still spoke up, the future world still needs a navy. Can the captain remember what he said? Will was startled at first, and then smiled in relief, so be it. Although he was a pirate now, he had never thought of himself as a real pirate, nor would he ever be one. Everyone else was trying to chase the Pirate King's name, but only he had his ambitions on the whole world. That's why he had never considered the Navy as his real enemy. In his mind, when he overthrew the rule of the Celestial Dragon, the Navy would become the power in his hands, so there was really no need to kill them all. The lessons of the war have been profound enough. After this battle, even if the world government rectifies some moths, the Navy will be powerless. After reorganizing his position, Will is still pirate, and loudly said, "The Navy has been beaten away by us, the rest of them are arrested." Many people knew right away that he didn't want to continue the pursuit, so it was wise to stop at the right time, as the results of the battle had been ungodly. And with Redfield and others joining them, the Navy, which was still stubborn, was soon defeated and captured. But Jian is a bit difficult to deal with. After she was controlled by Will using the magnetic field, she set a large number of desire fog to make a forbidden area around her. It is a headache. It's a good thing that Will remembered the dozens of warships that he had crumpled into a ball, which should have sea prism stone handcuffs in them, and the bottom of the Navy's warships all have a portion of sea prism stone inlay, which is the key to expelling sea kings. So he grabbed a warship and stretched it out, then let people go in and look for it, and soon found some sea prism stone handcuffs. With this thing, it's easy to handle her Tesoro, who was covered in gold, directly puts the sea prism stone handcuffs on Jian. In a sense, he is really capable of overcoming Jian as long as the precautions are taken in advance. It is impossible to give the other party a chance to retaliate. Seeing that the sea prism stones had taken effect, Will grabbed Giant directly, and then used his fist to make wind and directly blow away the remaining fog of desire surrounding her. Ignoring Giant's gaze that wanted to kill, he flew back up to the golden tower. Feeling the adoring awe of millions of people, he smiled charismatically. The opening act is over, and I now declare that I, the captain of the Faceless Pirates, the fourth Emperor Faceless, will hereby establish my country. And its name is Dragon Exterminator. Wah! The crowd, already in a surging mood because they had defeated the Navy, immediately jumped up with joy, weapons raised high in their hands, and shouted to the heavens. Despite the twists and turns and the fact that there were so many things that went wrong, the founding ceremony was completed successfully, and even more exciting. Because the Faceless Pirates accomplished this feat after defeating the Navy's elite force head-on. Anyone else might not have been able to do it, and all those who witnessed it have one word in their minds right now: fucking awesome. But there are also many people who change their faces after hearing the word Dragon Exterminator. There are definitely many people who use dragons as names or nicknames on the sea, and the name of the pirate group, and under ordinary circumstances, no one would make any wild association. But these two words from the mouth of the Faceless Will, who had just defeated the naval elite and had recently made a big fuss over the Sabeti Islands and frightened the celestial dragons into shrinking, one has to think more. The use of the word Dragon Exterminator as the name of the country, did he have the idea of replacing it? How would the celestial dragons feel about this? He really is a bold man who won't give a face to anyone. Only Asho, Nami, and others who have been following him around know that to exterminate the dragon really means to exterminate the celestial dragons. And conquering the sea is just a part of their captain's plan. Chapter 330 The Navy suffers heavy losses. Will has defeated the Navy's elite to establish a successful nation. The scene was filled with a smoke and a smell of blood after the war, as well as corpses and a large number of naval prisoners, while also stimulating the nerves of countless people. Cheers once again resounded to the sky. Next, Will announced the addition of Germa 66, and even the rumored army of evil was silently pocketed by him, so you can imagine how terrifying the future Faceless Pirates will be. As for those pirates who contributed to the battle, Will also netted them into the peripheral forces, and when the Cake Island was obtained, Big Mom's all nations also needed people to guard it, and then these people would have a place to use. In the end, the world government's carefully planned war not only gave Will a fierce reputation but also gained a large number of men. The Faceless Pirates' strength has not only not been devastated, but has grown larger. As for the hegemony of the Dark World, they were all silent. The moment the Navy was defeated, they knew that the situation was settled, and it was impossible for them to say the words of refusal. Even the shipping magnate, who had the strongest attitude before, stated that he would do his part in the next battle of the Four Emperors. The others also had money to contribute and people to contribute, and they were afraid that Will would think they were doing it perfunctorily and kill them directly. This kind of madman can't be messed with. After the big battle they just had, they generally think that Big Mom is finished. No, she definitely has to die. Or they're in trouble. Will isn't afraid of what they do to his face and what they do behind his back, and those who dare to do something but don't do anything, he will have to settle the score with them later. It is really thanks to the Navy's big gift, otherwise it is a bit difficult to convince these people to join their own camp, but with such a good objective to make the Faceless Pirate group to show the strength of the strong, everything will fall into place. The first time he saw him was when he was in the middle of a fight, and the second time he saw him was when he was in the middle of a fight, and the third time he saw him was when he was in the middle of a fight. Morgan's filmed everything and is now shaking with excitement. He is the most calm and excited one among all the other underground emperors. Will's coercion and enticement never included him from the beginning, and his war with Big Mom can't use his contribution as a writer. But on the other hand, Morgan's wanted to interview the Faceless Pirates, and try to make today's event a piece of big news that will shock the world. Will had no problem with this. He wasn't a revolutionary army, he didn't need to keep a low profile. It would even be better to say that the greater the fame and the higher the bounty, the better it is for his subsequent plans. When his fame reaches its peak, with a wave of his hand, many people will follow him to the Holy Land marriage-wise. It was really exciting just thinking about it. On the other side, Aokiji far away from the Navy headquarters were silent for a full minute after receiving the message from Kizaru before he asked them to come back as soon as possible. In the end, only 15,000 of the 40,000 elite soldiers escaped alive. Killed in battle, missing in action, captured. The list is endless. And that's not all. A number of vice admirals have been left behind in the main camp of the Faceless Pirates because they took the initiative to hold off the pirates voluntarily, and at the moment, their life and death are unknown. Most importantly, an admiral, Pink Rabbit, was caught. Except for him, a nominal fleet admiral, the huge Navy headquarters now has only a bunch of recruits and a few white-haired old guys left. The battle force, which had been hard to replenish, was on the verge of returning to its pre-liberation state, and the Navy's idea of becoming completely independent seemed to have suddenly become distant again. And with such an ugly defeat this time, how would the world view the Navy? Will the prestige gained by putting in so much effort to defeat Whitebeard suddenly evaporate? If it weren't for that group of officials in the world government holding the Navy's lifeline. Unfortunately, it's too late to say anything now. Aokiji closed his eyes in irritation, and after a while, after barely regaining his composure, he picked up the Denden Mushi. The first is to report it to the world government. Even with the professionalism of the Cypher Pol Agents Department, the world government probably already knows more details than he does. The second is to find a way to contact the Faceless Will, although it sounds very humiliating, but the other side arrested a large number of naval forces, including even many vice admirals, and also admiral, so he must find a way to see if they can be rescued. At the moment, it is not realistic to force the issue, so he can only find a way to talk about it. From the previous several contacts, the other party is not a person who is unable to communicate, and since the other party is taking the initiative to capture the Navy alive, then there must be a plan. In short, as long as the person isn't dead, it's always worth giving it a try. If the Navy did not care about these captured compatriots, the hearts of the people would be broken and the people would be completely disappointed in them. If you can't save your own people, who else do you want to save? Will just went to see Jian alone in an emergency gold prison, and it was a failed but expected meeting. It was a bad fate, a coincidence, a misunderstanding, but there is no denying it. It was born that way. Will didn't say anything more. Everyone's path is their own choice. He was willing to give Jian a chance, but his patience was also extremely limited. If it really came to the final step, then it can't be helped. Then when he came out of the prison, there was a fresh face walking up quickly, holding a Denden Mushi in his hand. Perhaps he was afraid that Will would kill him as a dangerous element, so the fresh face stopped before he reached Will. Captain Will, Fleet Admiral Aokiji would like to talk to you. Will looked at him with a blank expression. He had expected that the Navy would contact him, but he had lost the special contact Denden Mushi he had used to contact them last time. Looks like there are quite a few people from all sides on the island at the moment. Are you with the Navy or with the world government? Will faintly spoke up. A powerful aura instantly pressed down on the man, and cold sweat came out all at once. Does it matter who I am? The man struggled to speak. It's not important to you, but it's a little different to me, which will determine whether you can leave here alive or not, so you better think it over before answering me. Will's eyes were like those of a beast aiming at its prey, shuddering. Chapter 331 Pudding Plan. The man gritted his teeth and finally spat out two firm words, Navy. Hey, you're quite courageous, and at this time you still dare to say you are a Navy. Just when the man felt that he was going to be killed, Will suddenly retracted his oppressive aura and said, Bring me the Denden Mushi. If you were from the world government, you would be dead by now. When Will took the Denden Mushi, the man felt like he was in front of the door of hell, unaware of the sweat that had wet his back. This was the first time he had stood so close to face the fourth emperor directly, and hopefully, it will also be the last. After the Denden Mushi was connected, the voice of Aokiji was heard. And Will's lips curled up a bit. 10 minutes later, the call ended. No one except the two of them was clear about the details, but from Will's good mood, it seemed to show that he had gotten what he wanted. Morgans wrote the manuscript almost as fast as he could, then printed it as a newspaper and sprinkled it all over the world. The fact that Will, who was a fourth emperor, was going to build a nation was great news and received a lot of attention, so when Morgans vividly compiled a report of everything that happened at the nation-building ceremony from his own perspective, the world was shocked. Whether it's the faceless pirates openly declaring war on the Big Mom pirates, or the Navy attacking en masse but failing miserably, it's unbelievable. But in the end, the country named Dragon Exterminator established by Faceless Will is even more fascinating. It's not about changing the sky anymore, it's about poking the sky out and replacing it with another. This issue has been reduced almost entirely to a feature on the Faceless Pirates. Not only did it include the major events above, but it also mentioned the removal of Germa 66 from the world government to join Faceless Will, as well as interviews with some of the members, were compiled into a feature story that sold many times as many copies as before. The photos of Amit the shipping magnate and other emperors of the underground and Faceless Will laughing and chatting were all published. You want to change camps after you leave, then let's see if Big Mom believes you. It is said that after reading this issue, Big Mom was so angry that she made a scene on Cake Island, not only destroying most of her castle but also accidentally killing many of her own people, even some of his children. The next thing you know, the news is that Big Mom is starting to rally her troops and is preparing to fight the Faceless Pirates at her home base to the bitter end. Will's phrase "until death do us part" at the founding ceremony completely eliminated the possibility of reconciliation. The next battle of the two four emperors is bound to have one of them fall, or even two of them die together. Many people wanted to witness this unparalleled battle, but we're worried about being caught up in it, and were torn between the two. There were also some people who had the idea of fishing in troubled waters, and it wasn't just one or two people who wanted to pick up the pieces. And what will be the response of the world government and navy when the time comes? Are the other two four emperors just going to stand by and watch and do nothing? This all adds to the countless variables and suspense of the battle. Countless people are waiting for the final result with excitement and anxiety. And they wish the faceless pirates would fight the Big Mom pirates today. Just as everything settled down, the faceless pirates also began their final preparations for the war, and the first battle after the founding of the country was to take on Big Mom, who was also one of the four emperors, just to ask who else was left. Germa 66 was ready for war, and they were experts at it. Although after joining the faceless pirates group, he had to fight the other four emperors before he could use his strength, but Judge felt that there was a chance of victory in this battle, and it was not a small one. The red, blue and green trio are even more eager to hit Big Mom's door immediately. In their eyes the four emperors are nothing to fear, except for Faceless Will. The shipping magnate, who had no way out, urgently called in a large number of ships and men, and the others were not idle either, as the number of ships docked in the waters around the Golden Island was increasing every day. Stussy, who had an ulterior motive, contributed a lot of information and a considerable amount of money about the Big Mom pirates. The information about the ability of the ministers and cadres of the Big Mom Pirate Corps was collected with a lot of effort. But for Will, who had more information than what the world knew, it was useless. But it also proved that he was right. Stussy was trying to gain his trust, and spies from other forces are sometimes better than his own people. On top of that, Stussy even tried to charm him with her beauty and her control of the pleasure district to see what girls he wanted and didn't have. After declining several times, Will took the two prettiest ones as maids, in order to reassure her. When the time comes, he will use them as a microphone, so that Stussy can pass on the wrong information to the world government. For this, he also enjoyed a few days of blank stares from Snowball and other girls. The final preparations have been completed, and tomorrow Will lead his men straight to Cake Island, which means this is the last chance to do it. Pudding, having completed her day job in a spirit of desperation, decided to take one last gamble. I will complete the task my mother has given me. In the dead of night, Pudding, who had taken a deep breath, knocked lightly on Will's door. Lord Will, I've made my best chocolate dessert, want some? Come on in. Yes. The first step worked. She thought it was because she had successfully gained Will's trust and lowered the other party's defensive psychology that she had successfully made the first step, not knowing that it was just someone who couldn't sleep and was curious about what she wanted to do, so he cooperated with her and ate the chocolate cake in the middle of the night. After coming in, Pudding was still as good as before, putting the dessert and milk on the table, and then raised her head towards Will and showed a bright and charming smile. We'll have to say that a maid outfit of Pudding looks charming, and with that lovely smile that could win an Oscar, it's considered a hit with all ages. If he was changed to some lecherous chef, he would probably die of nosebleed. After Will silently marveled at Pudding's superb acting skills, he looked at her curiously. Anything else? Pudding's bright smile suddenly froze on her face. I have a sweet smile, and I'm so cute and pretty, don't you have a little heart? The second persona Pudding cries out in her mind in a frenzy. I will get back the grievances and humiliation I have suffered during this time. When your memories are extracted, you will become my playthings, and my mother will love me even more. A sudden sickly blush appeared on Pudding's face when she thought of it. Chapter 332 Just a little bit. This is my special chocolate cake with love, it's very good for sleep. Tomorrow you are going to lead the attack on Big Mom. Pudding knows she can't help much, and this is the only thing that she can do. Won't you try it? Pudding stood nervously with her cute face and put on a please try it's expression as if Will was committing a crime by not eating a little. Looking at Pudding's expectant face, Will found it interesting and took a bite like she wanted. Well, it's not bad, but I don't like desserts much. If you were on the Cake Island, your skill would be valued. Will just concentrated on eating the dessert without looking up at her, but Pudding still stiffened her whole body, and she felt for a moment that the man in front of her knew something. But immediately she put her worry in her stomach, no longer scaring herself. There are not many people who know her identity. Among the many children of Big Mom, the best hidden is her. If Will is now standing on the Cake Island and saying this to her, then she will not take any chances. And the other thing that made her confident that she hadn't been exposed was that if the other party discovered her true identity, how would they dare to eat what she had sent? Pudding looked at Will, who put the chocolate cake into his mouth one bite after another, and a smile on her face became more and more sweet and touching. Pudding, life was saved by you, my lord, To stay by your side is actually Pudding's greatest extravagance. If possible, Pudding would like to make a chocolate cake for my lord for the rest of her life. Unknowingly, when Pudding said these very touching words, she had quietly arrived behind Will. Tired, right? Pudding will give you a massage with that. Pudding reached out her sinful hand towards Will's head. Closer, closer. It's about to happen. Pudding's heart began to beat uncontrollably, and as long as she succeeded, she would be able to take one of the four emperor under her wing or even a slave by tampering with their memories, and then she would receive all of her mother's love, and she would become truly the most beloved daughter in her mother's heart. But a silver-white dinner plate stood in her way. Don't bother with the massage, baby 5 would kill you if she learned how you take her job. Remember to clean up when you leave. Pudding subconsciously took the plate, and then froze in place, dilly-dallying, unwilling to leave. At the same time, the evil Pudding in her heart began to growl incessantly, damn it. It was that close. She knew in her heart that the trust she got was not enough. In the world of pirates who possess such a magical item as devil fruit, those who are not vigilant often die ugly deaths, such as those unlucky people who lose their vigilance because the sugar is quite sweet and end up falling completely. According to the original plan, Pudding was prepared to gain the trust of the faceless pirates little by little. The ability to edit the memory of a target at will is so perverse that anyone could theoretically be controlled by Pudding if they weren't on guard. But there was no more time left for her to slow down and set up the original plan. She had to get ahead of the game, and now was her last chance. She had no choice but to take out her killer move. Her eyes were red, her tears swishing down, and it was heartbreaking to watch. However, Will just sat there and watched her perform quietly. The atmosphere was very embarrassing at one point. Evil Pudding, are you blind to have such a beautiful woman crying in front of you? Hurry up and say something to comfort me, or just say something. How can I go on with this? Ah. Asshole. The more Pudding cried, the sadder she became, but Will was like a piece of wood with no feelings. In the end, it was Pudding who couldn't hold on any longer and took the initiative to cry, Lord Will, actually, there are some things Pudding has always wanted to say to you, but she doesn't have the courage, but if she doesn't say them now, I'm afraid there will never be another chance. Oh. Don't owe me, you big-headed fucked. Pudding is going crazy, but still vividly renders, actually, from the moment you saved us, I fell in love with my Lord Will. I know Pudding is not worthy of you, my lord, but Pudding wants to repay your kindness in her own way. I see. Will's reaction almost made Pudding collapse. In all of her expectations, the only thing she did not expect was this result, but there is no turning back, there is no way back. Pudding had to let the play continue. After expressing her admiration and love for Will, but did not get any imaginary response, Pudding clenched her teeth, then smiled shyly at Will, and actually started to take off her clothes. Will pursed his lips and decided to continue to play dumb to the end, to see how she would continue this monologue. So clothes one by one slipped off the body of Pudding, and it didn't take long for Pudding to be in her birthday suit but was unable to get any little response from Will. Will looked at her with strange eyes, a little expectant and a little joking. There is still a little bit of curiosity, but that's all. The plan to seduce him was likely to fail. Evil Pudding, why hasn't the drug worked yet? Is he a monster among monsters like Mother, and the drug doesn't work at all? Pudding, with a shy face covering the key parts of her body with her hands, was feeling extremely urgent. This time the drug was specially sent to her by her mother's subordinate when the founding ceremony started. It is said that the efficacy of the drug is extremely amazing, and with only a little bit of it, it can even make a sea beast unconscious. And there will be no signs of awakening for at least 10 hours. It is regarded as the black technology drug of pirate world. But Pudding, who had prepared herself with many plans, cleverly incorporated all of the poison into the chocolate cake that Will had just eaten, fearing that it might not work. In her opinion, although faceless Will is the same 4 emperors as her mother, he is of normal human blood and can live, die and be poisoned just the same, unlike her mother, whose strong stomach acid dripping from her mouth could even melt steel. Against real monsters like Big Mom, it's hard to poison her with enchanting poisons and such, but against ordinary people like Will and Shanks, Pudding thinks it will definitely work. But unfortunately, from the looks of it, she missed the boat. Will ate all the special dessert she prepared in front of her, but sat there quietly watching her as if nothing had happened. Chapter 333 Defects. It must be said that Pudding is indeed a special creature with an angel face and devil body, especially seeing her lower half body that was slightly covered with her small hand that makes a man feel a bit itchy. But Will is no longer the playboy he once was, and most importantly, after countless battles and being used to death, his heart has become stronger. If Pudding thought that this would be enough to make him lose control, then she is really underestimating him. So the smile on Will's lips became stronger and stronger, but he was indifferent until he made Pudding shudder from his smile that was also not a smile. At this point, Pudding has confirmed that the drug is ineffective, and is even a little worried that the other party has not noticed anything wrong, so it can only be the last step. After both scenarios A and B had failed, Pudding chose to go to the end with scenario C. It's cold. The charming Pudding looked at Will with expectant eyes, as if she was begging for a warm embrace. Will thought about it, then threw a cloud of lava to her side, startling her. The magma temperature is high, now it's not cold anymore. The spiral ascension level steel straight man created by Will gave Charlotte Pudding a serious blow. Even an actress like Pudding, who had worked on her acting skills since she was a child, could no longer maintain her incredulous expression of shock. Who am I? What am I doing? What should I do next? Pudding had never thought things would be like this at the show, and in this brief moment, she was suddenly confused and frustrated. Will saw from her expression that the show wouldn't go on if this continued. So he took the initiative and said, "Do you really want to repay me?" When Pudding was woken up from her disorientation by his voice, hope rose in her heart and she nodded her head. Pudding knows that she can't compare to Nami-sama and the others, but this is the only thing that Pudding can give to you, my lord. With that said, Pudding took her hands away from her body very shyly, showing all her youthful beauty to Will's eyes. At the same time, evil Bryn roared in her heart, "How can I be no better than those ugly girls? This is a big loss. But as long as the plan succeeds, what is this sacrifice?" Will listened and nodded happily as if ignoring the beautiful fruit body of the girl in front of him. "Very well, I do need you to do something for me." Actually, up to this point Pudding was nervous and apprehensive, but she tried to keep her persona from crumbling, and she knew that it was impossible to give nothing at all. But just as she nodded shyly on the surface, her heart determined to approach Will for the final step. Then she heard Will say this. "Come on board with me tomorrow, I'll take you to Cake Island to see the best dessert makers in the world. It is said that they are all there. There is something I need you to help me with." When she heard Will mention the word Cake Island again, Pudding tried not to care, but there was always a faint feeling of uneasiness around her, which was very annoying. But Will's willingness to take her with him was good news, as it meant that even if today's plan failed, she would still have a chance to complete the mission on the way. And even if the mission fails, as long as she doesn't reveal her identity, she has already entered the ranks of the Faceless Pirates and will likely play a specific role in the Battle of Cake Island, believing that even a little weakness or negligence in a battle between the two four emperors will be magnified to the extreme and become the key to defeat. At this point, Pudding is absolutely right, but it's not Will who really has the fatal weakness, it's her mom, Big Mom. If things had gone according to plan, Caponebridge would have almost teamed up with Luffy's gang to kill Big Mom at the next tea party. The photo of the nun, the huge character flaws that could have been the death omen that caused Big Mom to lose the war and even her own life. It was because of this knowledge that Will chose to publicly declare war, thereby pushing his own popularity to a peak. But compared to that, Will still wants to defeat Big Mom in an open and above-board manner. From the beginning, this was a war that could not be lost. Pudding had no idea what Will was thinking, much less what Will wanted to take her to Cake Island for. All she knew was that she had been kicked out naked. Bastard. Go to hell. Pudding was holding the clothes on her body with an ugly face, and her mind couldn't help cursing. Although it saddens her to seduce a man she doesn't like without shame, it's much worse when he ignores her with no interest or even dismisses her. 100 times worse, 1,000 times worse, 10,000 times worse. Pudding really can't understand why he is so calm when she is so beautiful, so cute, and even her body is as good as anyone else's when she takes off all her clothes to seduce him. Is it that aspect that doesn't work? Pudding could not help but maliciously speculate about Will's physical defects, and she could only console herself with this. But no matter how much she let it out, her plan was a complete failure. Good thing it wasn't the end of the world, she still had a chance. After getting dressed, Pudding left with a final hateful glare toward Will's clothes room. Will was also contemplating in his room. He didn't want to destroy the flowers, but only if Pudding was willing to work for him. If not, he would consider taking the memory fruit into his own hands. The fact that this devil fruit can accomplish so much, he would never let Pudding leave alive. As for the piece of chocolate cake that he had eaten before, Will didn't really eat it, knowing that Pudding had a problem that she might tamper with the food and still eating it to see if it would affect him. That was a little too stupid. Will was very satisfied with his physical quality, but he had not yet left the mortal body, and the poison would definitely still affect him. So in order to cooperate with Pudding to keep the show going, he directly used the gate fruit to open a door in his mouth to connect to other places, and things were sent to other places once they were in his mouth. If Pudding knew that Will hadn't eaten at all and that he was teasing her the whole time, watching her making a fool of herself, she would probably be furious. Maybe that evil Pudding will even jump out and try to die with him. Meanwhile, Snowball, who was restless and couldn't sleep, started wandering around the castle and immediately cursed Will after witnessing Pudding coming out of his room naked, and then went back with her mouth full of resentment. Chapter 334 War. Ever since the 4th Emperor Faceless Will officially declared war on Big Mom, who is also one of the 4 emperors, tension and unease have gripped the new world, and everyone knows that this will be a prolonged war, no less than the War of the Best. Maybe the name 4 Emperor will become a thing of the past and the sea will be reshuffled. So whether it's the Navy, the world government, the deeply hidden revolutionary army, or the countless pirate groups that have suffered a major loss in the Battle of the Golden Island, the dark forces all have their eyes firmly fixed on the Faceless Pirates and the Big Mom Pirates. And when the Faceless Pirate group led hundreds of warships and blatantly flooded Cake Island, the world was still shaken. But Big Mom hasn't been idle all this time, and countless of her troops have been gathered on Cake Island, waiting for the Faceless Pirates to attack. What the final outcome would be, who knows? At this time, on Cake Island, which is full of grass and trees, the 3 Sweets generals, 34 ministers and other children of Big Mom and tens of thousands of Hummy's troops are all standing on the square inches the center of the Cake Island. Even though Will had turned all the people of the Dark World against her, Big Mom was still on top in terms of the total force. Big Mom herself was sitting on a huge throne in the rear, staring straight ahead, with Zeus and Prometheus floating on her left and right. Just at this moment, a message came from the outermost lookout responsible for observing the sea. The Faceless Pirates is coming. The shining silver white light of the technologically advanced Avengers was the first thing to appear in everyone's vision, and then the dense silhouettes of the ships followed, putting great pressure on Big Mom's side and making many people quietly swallow their saliva, wondering if they could really win this war. Even if we win, how many people will survive in the end? And as the side that took the initiative to declare war, the fleet led by the Faceless Pirates had the full advantage of the first hand, and the momentum was compelling. Everyone believed that Will was sure of victory before taking the initiative to declare war on Big Mom, and many people like the rulers of the underworld had no way out, so they could only hope to win the war. So psychologically, the Faceless Pirate group had the absolute advantage. Seemingly sensing that some people were different, Big Mom, who was sitting on the throne, immediately snorted. Suddenly, the fear of Big Mom in the hearts of the crowd immediately overwhelmed their uneasiness of the next battle between the 2 emperors. Outsiders may think that Faceless Will's fierce reputation is higher than that of Big Mom, but those of them who live under Big Mom's shadow regard Big Mom as the most terrifying monster in the world. And so the fear in their hearts was taken over by an even greater fear, and although their faces were so distorted, the pre-war momentum was lifted. Soon, the Avengers entered the range of the Big Mom fleet, but neither side had any intention of firing directly. Only when Will led his men into the hinterland of Cake Island, a position where there was no chance to escape after the firefight, did he lead them to a halt. From this position, he could clearly see the look of unease, fear and anger on the faces of some people. As a member of the 4 Emperors' forces, they had always been the ones to attack others, and when was it their turn to do so? But when the person who came to their door was the equal of Big Mom, they were angry, but at the same time, they must have been afraid. Because their sense of superiority was gone. On the Avengers, Will stood proudly at the bow of the ship, while Snowball was standing beside him, looking extremely complex. Finally the day has come to fulfill the promise. Are you ready? Snowball seemed a little touched, but her eyes were confused, supposedly remembering the good ones. But all of that eventually dissolved into one word: please, Captain. Will was stunned at first, and then huge laughter spread throughout the battlefield. Big Mom, die. Kill. Oh. Will has no intention of getting involved with Big Mom, it's a do-or-die war. Originally Big Mom wanted to put in a few harsh words to find out why Will would do this, but who would have thought that the other side would just start fighting without saying a word? The furious, fierce-looking Big Mom immediately roared, "Fire! Don't leave one alive!" In the blink of an eye, more than 10 ships were sunk on each side. The Great War has begun in earnest. Countless uninvolved people were hiding far away, watching this amazing battle with great excitement. The spectacle was so spectacular it almost made these people collectively high. Will didn't want to take action directly, but he had brought these people with him anyway, and losing too many of them would hinder his next integration plan. So he stretched out his right hand, wearing the Infinity Gauntlet, and gently gripped it towards the Big Mom fleet, which was bombarding the front with shells. Crunch, crunch. Steel twisting screeching sounds came out from Big Mom fleet one after another. All the cannons were crushed to pieces by Will's grip. Fire, fire, fire. Bastard. Why are you not firing? Captain, it's not that we're not firing, it's that we can't. All the cannons were reduced to lumps of iron, it's all useless. At that moment, Judge and the others, realizing that the opponent's firepower was momentarily deactivated, immediately laughed maniacally and increased their artillery fire to suppress it, and at that moment the Big Mom fleet was blown to pieces. The other side's firepower was nullified by Boss, they're finished, haha. Fight. Kill them. Big Mom pirates, die. I never thought I'd have the day to fight one of the four emperors, it's so cool. Without the cannons, Big Mom's fleet was a complete target, crying out for help from Will's powerful firepower. Run, Captain, we can't fight. Run? To run away is to die. Let's go. We still have a chance as long as we can fight at the port side. The captains of the various ships shuddered and swung at the thought of what Big Mom had done to the betrayer. Keep fighting, and they may still survive. If they run, they're dead for sure. And will the faceless pirates let them run? And so, with great fear of Big Mom, the remaining ships shouted out a suicide charge, trying to salvage the huge firepower disadvantage by engaging in a battle to the side. The good news is that they are not that far apart, which gives them a lot of hope. Will, however, did not bother with these cannon fodder anymore, and led the corps members directly to the Cake Island, where the real battlefield is. Chapter 335 Far from fighting between monsters. It is only a matter of time before the fleet of ships assembled by Big Mom is destroyed, but the death of these people will not affect the final outcome of the war. The real elite of the Big Mom pirate group all gathered on the Cake Island. To be frank, the peripheral forces are used to consume the faceless pirate group, and if it is gone, does not affect anything. The next duel will be the real battle. General versus generals. King versus king. When Will led his crew to the dueling place, Big Mom was looking at him with her huge size in a fierce grudge. Faceless Will, you have guts. I haven't gone to trouble you yet, you actually dare to come here yourself. It seems that sitting in the position of the four emperor has made you too inflated. Today you all have to die here. When it comes to the word death, Big Mom's destructive hockey of Conqueror is fiercely released towards Will and his group. Will had a smile on his face, but his eyes were full of indifference, and the hockey of the Conqueror released by Big Mom was blown away by his hockey of Conqueror counterattack before it could even touch the crowd. The two strands of Conqueror suddenly entangled together, just like water and fire, fiercely colliding with each other with his laser sound, and the huge wind pressure caused by the aftershocks alone made many people have to frequently retreat. The only people who are able to resist the aftermath of the confrontation between the two emperors with their hockey of Conqueror are only a few strong ones such as Isho, Redfield, and Kitakuri. The many children of Big Mom were the first to see their mom at full strength, and the seemingly tiny figure in front of Big Mom actually managed to fight her head-on without losing a step, which shocked them even more. Or should they say, worthy of being the fourth emperor? Just then, in the face of Big Mom's ravings, Will gave his response with a light smile. Inflated? You think too much. I came here because I was sure I would kill you. Many hearts and minds were shaken. At the end of the day, a deadly and austere momentum burst from him once again, actually making Big Mom lose focus for a moment. The momentum competition is to see who can't hold on to a weakness first. So when the crowd came back to their senses, they were even more horrified to see that Big Mom actually took a step back in the midst of a hockey of Conqueror confrontation. Big Mom looked down at her feet in disbelief, and then, in a frenzy of irritation, raised her momentum to the top, swinging a huge fist wrapped in armament hockey to smash into Will, who was the size of an ant. I want you to die. Boom. The fearless Will didn't flinch or dodge, just like an ant shaking an elephant, he also threw the strongest punch. The utterly disproportionate contrast makes for a funny picture, but the huge contrast between the two results in a complete loss of sound for everyone else. Although Big Mom's strange power is horrifying, but Will also has his own bottom line. 45 devil fruits have already strengthened his body to the extent that it crosses the limits of his species. In other words, Big Mom is not an ordinary human being but has the blood of other races, and Will is also beyond ordinary humans. It's a duel to the death between monsters. The huge destructive force did not cause any damage to both sides, but it made the ground under their feet crumble and the whole square ruptured and was destroyed by the collision of the fist. Go. Don't get involved in Mom's fight. Leave the captain here and don't disturb them. Kitakuri and Isho were wise enough to lead their men away from here, as the destruction that the two four emperors could cause with their full power was far beyond their imagination, and they would have died if they had been involved. The inhabitants of the Cake Island had already been moved away, so they didn't have to worry about anything at all. On the other side, Big Mom and Will, who did not use their devil fruit ability first, punched each other one after another, and in the blink of an eye, the ground collapsed several dozen meters. Is that the only extent of your strength? After taking another hard attack from Big Mom with brute force, Will's eyes were fierce. Zeus. This kind of talk has never been used by Big Mom to destroy the morale of others. When is it her turn to be irritated by it? The crazy Big Mom called out to Zeus directly, and then grabbed him out of her body with her red, evil-eyed stare. Thunder. A giant pillar of lightning struck directly at Will, who had a mocking smile on his lips. Boom. The loud noise spread throughout the battlefield, and Kitakuri and the others, who had already found their opponents and started fighting, looked over subconsciously. With such a terrifying attack, Even the other 4 emperors couldn't get away with it, right? Just as this thought had just risen, Will's unharmed but shining electric figure reappeared before everyone's eyes. Playing with lightning in front of me? What an idiotic thing to do. Let me show you what it means to really control lightning. 1 billion volts, ancient Thor. Will dashed into Zeus's body with a flash and then sucked him. There was a thunderstorm of lightning that flashed so brightly you couldn't open your eyes. In the next second, Will, who had absorbed all the energy of Zeus, directly transformed into the ancient god of thunder, lowered his head and gazed at the ugly-looking Big Mom with a cold and ruthless stare. And Zeus, who was almost electrocuted, was reduced to the size of a palm, weak on the ground, unable to fly. The look in its eyes was filled with fear, but also a little affection and awe. God's judgment. It was as if the ancient god of thunder had really reappeared on earth, and when the violent thunder and lightning was obediently held in Will's hands and condensed into a spear and thrown at Big Mom, countless people were lost for a moment. But not Big Mom. Napoleon was held in her hands, as if the unstoppable giant's best move, the spear of Elbaf's Lansaikaku, had been wielded with astonishing power in her hands. But the destructive power of lightning is never limited to its penetrating power. After only a moment of stalemate, the more destructive ancient Thor god's judgment shattered Big Mom's attack and blew Big Mom out of the sky with a violent breath. Mom. Many people were stunned at the sight. And the people on Will's side shouted out. It is clear to everyone that the most critical aspect of this war is the victory between Faceless Will and not Big Mom. Judging from the current battle situation, it seems that Faceless Will still has the advantage. But in the next second, the roaring cheers stopped. Like an ancient beast awakened from its slumber, Big Mom, who had been blown several hundred meters away, they could not even see any wounds on her as she stood up again as if nothing had happened. When she was only 5 years old, she was able to shatter the blades of giants, without injury. Will's attack is strong, but to kill her with this alone is a pipe dream. Chapter 336 History is always remarkably similar. How strong is Big Mom? The nun who once adopted her, when negotiating with the world government, gave a 5-year-old Big Mom this comment: if she goes to the Navy, she'll be an admiral and a fleet admiral in the future. If you send her to the Cypher Pol Agents Department, she will be the strongest shield in the hands of the celestial dragons. And at that time Big Mom had not yet received the devil fruit of the nun's soul. What followed was exactly what the nun had predicted, as Charlotte Linlin grew into a complete monster, stepping up to the throne of the 4 Emperor and becoming one of the strongest people on the sea. It's hard to imagine what the world would be like now if Big Mom was really brought back by the world government to train and be brainwashed. In terms of her own defensive power alone, Big Mom may be the strongest of the 4 emperors, no, quite possibly the world. If you don't count her self-healing ability, Kaido may not even be able to match her. And when she was attacking using Zeus and Prometheus, it's Big Mom that got hurt first. But it turns out that the damage that either fire or lightning can do to her is negligible. So after Will's attack just now, after counteracting Big Mom's Ikaku, it at most just knocked her flying, and besides being a bit dizzy, Big Mom didn't even feel anything. To describe her as a steel balloon is a joke. Is there such a thing as hard steel? Just as Katakuri and the others were reassuringly focusing on their respective opponents, Big Mom pulled Prometheus over and launched a ferocious counterattack. Blade Mother's blaze. Fierce flames descend from the sky. But the violent thunder is indifferently and ruthlessly blocking the flames firmly. Red flames and silvery white thunder clash in the sky, emitting a destructive atmosphere that is frightening. Emperor's sword broken blade. I'm going to burn you in half. The flames of Prometheus cling to the 2-horned cap Napoleon, concentrating the power of the 2 great homies. Big Mom held the fire blade high and slashed at Will, the god of thunder. Get back. Will's right hand, wearing an infinity gauntlet, directly grabbed the blade of the Napoleon, and then the electromagnetic field instantly moved to twist it into a slant. At the same time, his left hand, which had been building up its strength, clenched its fist tightly, and there were layers and layers of white light on it, and it was not clear whether it was the power of lightning or the power of the fruit of the earthquake, or both. When Napoleon began to wail, Big Mom realized that no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't pull it out of Will's hands, and it was too late to move away. The strength and power of 45 devil fruits after boosting him, the power of thunder, electromagnetic force, repulsion, power of shock, armament hockey, and finally plus the increase of more devil fruit. Will punched Big Mom with only his body. When Big Mom flew upside down with the sonic boom resounding through the sky, vomiting blood, almost no one like Sparrow could believe their eyes. The monster-like unbeatable mother. They can't believe she is injured. And that's the second time she has been blown away head-on. The first time it happened, they could console themselves with the fact that the Faceless Will was nothing more than that, and could not hurt their mother at all. But what about this time? Is the blood sprayed in the air also fake? That's why panic begins to spread. Just then, Kitakuri, who was struggling to parry Redfield's attack, shouted, "Mama is fine, don't be distracted." Almost all of Big Mom's children knew of Kitakuri's ability, so when he shouted it out loud, everyone felt relieved, as if they had found their backbone. But he reminded them too late, and to be repeatedly distracted in the midst of a battle against Isho and others was a death wish. As one of the three Sweets generals, Charlotte Cracker was shattered by Isho, and was left dead on the ground, unable to move. And Tesoro took the opportunity to wrap one of Charlotte Smoothie's legs in gold. Lockobi, the Vinsmoke and others have also solved their opponents or gained the upper hand. Bartholomew consciously assumed the responsibility of protecting the back row, repeatedly making the Big Mom Pirates' attack useless. And the scales of victory are beginning to tip heavily in Will's favor. To make matters worse, the cannon fodder on the periphery has been annihilated, and the 6 people who have continued to kill have fought head-on with the tens of thousands of Hami's army created by Big Mom. And the scene is extremely chaotic and bloody. Kitakuri thought his side had the advantage in strength and mid to high-end combat power, but they didn't realize that Redfield and the others were much stronger than they thought. The 3 Sweet generals were no match for Isho, Redfield, and Tesoro, and would not have been able to withstand the attack if the ministers hadn't joined forces. Especially Redfield, who reeked of blood and held a strange-looking umbrella as a weapon. If not for his ability to foresee the future, Kitakuri would have been defeated. Redfield is a genius among geniuses, both in terms of talent and training of observation hockey. What Kitakuri is fighting now are the leftovers from his early days, and both of them can see the future to a certain extent, and even Redfield can see a little further than Kitakuri. Redfield, at full strength, is stronger than an admiral. Kitakuri and the others never imagined that their Big Mom pirate group would actually be wiped out one day. The amazing battle between the Faceless Pirates and the Big Mom Pirates attracted so much attention that Morgan sent a lot of reporters to cover it in real time and also shot a lot of footage to send back. But they only dared to hide in faraway places to broadcast live, not knowing the real battle situation on the island, which made many people anxious. Just when the world government wanted to force the Navy to attack again, trying to fish for a profit but was blocked by people like Aokiji, and others. And Kaido, who had disappeared for a long time, showed up again, and was leading his own band of beast pirates to the waters near Cake Island. It seems that the war will become more intense in Cake Island. Whose side will Kaido's presence be on? Or is he also thinking of picking up the fruits of victory and trying to wipe out the 2 emperors? As soon as the intelligence officer who discovered the beast pirates' whereabouts reported the incident, he was horrified to see that the last 4 emperors had also appeared, and they were facing the beast pirates. Knowing that Kaido is close to Big Mom, and even Kaido seems to owe Big Mom a favor, how could Will not be on guard? Long before he was ready to make a move on Big Mom, he sent someone to contact Shanks. As the man who has faced Devil Fruit ability, how could he not think of participating in such an important event? Just kidding. In fact, Shanks actually agreed this time to pay off the favor he owed before. History is always strikingly similar, and the scene of the War of the Best is about to repeat itself. Chapter 337 Capone Bridge Plan. The 100 Beasts Pirates and the red-haired pirates meet unexpectedly in the waters off Cake Island, and if Shanks can stop Kaido once, he can stop it twice. The 2 emperors of the sea fought without even having words. Add to that the battle between Faceless Will and Big Mom on the Cake Island, and it's clearly turned into a 2-on-2 scuffle between the 4 emperors. The prying eyes of the world government immediately stopped all plans for the war when they got the news, with the Beast Pirates and the red-haired pirates watching over them, and if they and the Navy dared to show their faces around Cake Island, they would surely become a target. After all, the war between the 4 emperors was considered a civil war. And the world government and Navy are the common enemies of all pirates on the ocean. If you want to take advantage of this opportunity, you'll have to see if you have the right teeth. The extreme uncooperativeness of Admiral Aokiji, coupled with the sense of crisis created by the appearance of Kaido and Shanks, finally prompted the world government to give up wading into the muddy waters, and no matter who wins or loses in the end, at least one of the 4 kings will fall. This is already the most celebrated good news for the world government that has not contributed a single soldier. Back to the cake. Big Mom, who was punched by Will, rolled over dozens of times after landing on the ground before finally managing to stop. It had been too many years since anyone had been able to hurt her. The punch not only broke through the defenses of her tough body and dented her bloated stomach, but also injured her insides with the force of the Quake Devil Fruit, which was the real reason why she vomited blood. Even if Big Mom is really a monster, she can't escape the category of creatures, and Will doesn't believe that her internal organs are so indestructible. This scene was shocking in the eyes of Caponebridge, who had been plotting to kill Big Mom. The only time he had ever seen Big Mom injured was when someone accidentally knocked over a picture of the nun at the last tea party. That time Big Mom went into a fit of mere instinct and almost killed everyone at the tea party with strange sounds. But that was also the time that Caponbridge found the big man's weakness. A Big Mom who goes into a rage over a picture of a nun being knocked over would completely lose her tough body defenses, and just simply kneeling down would leave her knees bleeding and vulnerable. Originally, he had considered whether or not to team up with a faceless Will, steal the picture of the nun at a critical moment, and then smash it in front of the Big Mom. This way faceless Will, who was also the Four Emperors, could probably easily kill the defenseless Big Mom. And the fact that he teamed up with the fourth Emperor Faceless Will to kill another Four Emperor may have brought his reputation to a peak. Maybe with the help of Faceless Will, he can sit on the Four Emperor throne left behind after Big Mom's death. But when Faceless Will punched Big Mom, again and again, ignoring the opponent's defenses and spitting out blood, he threw away the idea completely. A monster of the level of the Four Emperor is not something he can speculate on at all. Perhaps when he took out the picture of the nun and smashed it, it wasn't the death of Big Mom that came first, but the end of him who dared to venture into the war of the Four Emperor. Looking around at the chaos of the battlefield, Caponbridge wisely chose to retreat. Now that the plan to kill Big Mom has been shattered, the most important thing now is to take his wife and children and leave this wrong place. He does not want to be taken as a Big Mom pirates and lose his life. As Caponbridge ran away, Big Mom pirates suffered heavy casualties. The faceless pirates don't have as many mid-level cadres as the Big Mom pirates, but their high-end force is much stronger than that of Big Mom, so it's only a matter of time before Katakuri and the others are defeated. It seemed like it was all over. For the first time in years, Big Mom, having been wounded, went into a frenzy when she got back on her feet. The unbearable strange sound instantly swept across Cake Island. Even Will frowned. The best solution was to use the Fruit of Silence to teach Big Mom how to behave. But replacing the Devil Fruit takes a minute, which is too risky and not necessary. Will directly used more moat to increase 30 times on himself, and the huge figure seemed to disappear directly in front of everyone's eyes. While someone was still looking around for Will's figure, Big Mom, who seemed to have lost her senses and was screaming, was hammered into the ground by Will, who appeared above him like an instantaneous movement. Roar! Will's roar was like thunder exploding in their ears at the same time. Many had just been incapacitated by Big Mom's strange sound, and then were dizzy from Will's thunderous roar, with blood streaming from their ears. The so-called strange sound is, to put it bluntly, a combination of hockey of Conqueror and sound waves. He also possesses both the Thunderbolt Fruit and the Earthquake Fruit, so his understanding of sonic attacks is far greater than that of Big Mom. So louder than a voice? I'm sorry, it won't work on me. Looking at Big Mom, who was hammered into the ground and struggling to get out, Will took a deep breath, then wrapped all kinds of power around his hands and posed with his body leaning forward and pulling back with both fists. Die. Even before his voice fell, Will's fists danced like phantom shadows, wildly smashing into Big Mom's body with dozens of attacks per second. Aura. 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 Boom. As Will's final punch fell from the sky, the entire square exploded instantly. Prospero and others, who were already far away, were instantly blown away by the energy blast, and every stone ejected was comparable in power to a musket, killing an unknown number of people. Redfield was ready to deliver the final blow to Katakuri, but the foretelling of the future forced him to get out early and retreat far away with his men. Everyone had seen the scene of Faceless Will pushing Big Mom on the ground with his hands, but now the wave of air from the attack alone had caused so much destruction. What would happen to the Big Mom who had taken all of Faceless Will's attacks head-on? Members of both sides were subconsciously focused on the center of the battle after being lifted off the ground. Pudding, who hadn't had a chance to do anything, was now covering her mouth with a face of fear to prevent herself from making a sound. When the scarred Big Mom was rushed out by a huge fountain, the crowd was shocked to see that Will's series of attacks had actually pierced through the Cake Island. What a destructive force this is. Chapter 338 Solep Center Explosion. It was as if the entire battlefield had been suddenly pressed to pause, and the silence was terrifying. Faceless Will's powerful attack literally destroyed all the faith support the Big Mom pirates had in Big Mom. Big Mom is strong as a monster, but apparently, now a monster stronger than her has appeared. Had Big Mom not summoned her hummies and used Big Wave at the last minute to send herself back to the island, the battle might have been over. The Big Wave, which seemed to be alive, slowly disappeared from the big hole in the center of the island after completing its task, and it was exhausted from trying to lift Mom up. What the hell are you if you've survived all this? The giant race doesn't have an inherently strong defense like this. The victorious Will couldn't help but ask, as he was indeed a bit curious about Big Mom's race, or if she was actually a product of scientific research, such as the accident that occurred when Vegapunk was researching the lineage factor. If they say that Big Mom is actually a weapon of war accidentally born in an ordinary human couple after receiving the superior blood factor of each race, it seems that everything can be explained. After all, those who had abandoned Big Mom's parents were all ordinary human beings, and if they could travel on such a luxurious ship and still barely raised Big Mom for several years, they would definitely not be ordinary human beings. Will was very interested in these things, but apparently, the immature Big Mom didn't know about them at all, and even if she did, she wouldn't tell him. Big Mom just looked hideous, gasping for air, and the seemingly endless rounds of heavy punches just now really did make her feel the pain. What's more, every punch that Will threw at her would penetrate the outer surface of her strong defenses, causing great pain and damage inside her body. The good news is that after using the armament hockey for defense, the power of the shock devil fruit was effectively reduced, and that's why she wasn't killed alive. But even so, she was hurt quite badly, and she swallowed back the blood that had come up to her throat several times. Mom. Are you okay? Prometheus, the only one of the three homies still intact, asked worriedly around the Big Mom. Shut up and say one more word and I'll eat you. Big Mom, with a gloomy, mad face, grabbed Prometheus directly and attached the flame to her fist. Prometheus immediately just shut his mouth in shock, while staring at Will with a vicious glare. At first glance, Big Mom's country is sustained by her family, but those who know it knows that her country is built on fear of Big Mom. Anyone who disobeyed her wishes or disliked her, even her own children, would be eaten by her or die with their entire lifespan taken away. Fear paired with the power of the fruit of the soul makes her reign unbeatable. But when she faces an opponent of the same level, when the enemy has no fear of her, the fruit of the soul can do very little. In other words, she now has to rely on her physical skills to fight Will, in addition to Prometheus in her hand. So Big Mom rushed forward, her huge body breaking the ground with every step. Firestorm. Faced with Big Mom's uninspired attack, Will shook his head in disappointment, then hit her with a back-to-back uppercut to the jaw before Big Mom could hit him, knocking her off the ground. But just when Will was about to finish off Big Mom with a series of attacks, he found that Big Mom's evil ghost-like face was actually laughing. Soul. At the center, an invisible force suddenly swept through the arena, and one by one, those affected by this force vomited blood and fainted. Only Redfield, Isho, Katakuri and a handful of people who have trained their observation hockey to a high level barely stayed sober, but it was like being beaten on the head hundreds of times with an indefensible hammer. The pain alone is unbearable. The Hami soldiers and some of those who were not mentally strong enough, had their souls shattered and fell to the ground like puppets with broken strings. Will, who was also defenseless and nearest, felt as if 10,000 needles had pierced 1,000 holes in his soul, a pain so different from the physical that it is hard to describe. But his mind, or rather soul, strength was likewise strengthened by a large amount of devil fruit energy, and although the key to unlocking the treasure chest had not yet been found, the quality was there, so although he suffered the most severe damage, it was not intolerable. Both the trance and the pain made his next attack slower by several beats, and even his movements were deformed. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the fierce-looking Big Mom clenched her hands on her weapon and blasted out to an attack that can shatter the mountains. Ikaku Sovereignty. The giant tribe's best moves are used with weapons to exert maximum power, but Napoleon was twisted into a twist by Will before and couldn't be used at all, so even if its power couldn't be exerted 100%, Big Mom was determined to use both of its sides to attack Will with Ikaku Sovereignty. If it were put in ordinary times, even if Big Mom used this sneak attack, Will would be confident that he could easily avoid it. But the pain and sluggishness in his soul caused him to experience severe delays and jerky control of his body, and he was unable to dodge this move, Ikaku Sovereignty, only to use his armed armament hockey for the defense at the last minute. Boom. Will, who transformed into the ancient god of thunder, spanned the entire Cake Island, collapsing countless buildings before finally stopping at the edge of the island. This was the first time since the beginning of the war that Big Mom had done real damage to Will. But, apparently, she also had a hard time using this hidden weapon, and her look withered quickly, and her breathing became ragged. And the so-called soul shock explosion is actually a special way to detonate the soul power she extracts in her daily life, in order to carry out a wide-ranging sudden attack at the soul level. Any creature affected by this soul bomb will be traumatized, and those with weaker souls will die without a trace of injury. Even if someone with a strong soul is suddenly attacked in such a way, they will be in a trance and their thoughts will be confused, leaving them to be slaughtered. Will didn't know Big Mom had such a killer weapon, so he got hit. The good news is that this is a wide-area attack that doesn't discriminate between friend and foe, or else the faceless pirates might suffer heavy losses. The only thing that matters now is whether Will, who took a hard hit from Big Mom, is seriously injured or not. As it turns out, any of the four emperors can't be defeated casually. Chapter 339 Punching Bug. Soul Attack? It really scared me. As Will's voice fell, the electromagnetic shield, which had sunk into a depression, quickly returned to its original state. And Big Mom pirates all showed a look of horror, and their hearts quickly sank to the bottom. Big Mom's attack didn't even scratch him, simply a fight against monsters among monsters. Can Mom really win? Many people who are still conscious can't help but think so, and their confidence begins to waver. Big Mom's face is gloomy and fierce like a demon. It was hard for her to believe that the combination of Soul Shock Blast plus Hockey of Conqueror had failed to annihilate the enemy in one fell swoop, or even cause any damage to Will. At the same time, she also became agitated. Kaido, who had once owed her a great debt of gratitude, promised to join forces with her to destroy the Faceless Pirate group, but why hadn't she seen anyone so far? Although very reluctant, but Big Mom cut to experience the difficulty of Faceless Will. If there are no variables, then the final result of today's battle between the two emperors will most likely turn out to be the end of her. With such a trance, Will immediately return to the battlefield like an instantaneous movement. Have you thought of a way to die? Big Mom was in shock. In a panic, she subconsciously used a soul spell. Leave. Or life? After saying this, Big Mom's heart tightened. If it was before, she absolutely would not have any expectations, but she was sure that the soul shock explosion didn't work. And her Hockey also solidly hit Will but didn't leave damage on him, so right now her opponent's heart inevitably does not have a trace of fear or other thoughts. If she succeeded, then she would be able to reverse the battle and instantly kill the opponent, and it would be worth the fight anyway. If the target has even the slightest bit of fear or dread of the caster, they will pass the judgment and allow the caster to drain their lifespan or their entire soul. It sounds very powerful, ignoring any defense and taking the enemy's soul, but it's ridiculous against those who are strong in mind and unafraid in heart. The fearless Jinbai has made Big Mom feel defeated and panicked, not to mention that she is now facing an opponent of her own level who has the upper hand and can't find the slightest fear of her in Will's heart. So when Big Mom opens her big mouth and asks with a fierce face, leave. Or life? Will inexplicably took a half step back, and Big Mom, who saw the scene, immediately laughed out loud. The final victor is still me. Faceless Will, I'll take your soul without further ado. Mama. Prospero and the others, who were still wobbling because of the aftermath of the soul-shattering explosion, immediately perked up with an expression of extreme joy on their faces. There it is. Mom's invincible soul spell. Even an emperor will die from this move. It was a heavy loss, but it was a win after all. Just as Big Mom was laughing like a maniac, reaching out and grabbing Will, she suddenly felt something was wrong. Why didn't his soul appear? Will, who had taken half a step back on one leg and had unwittingly assumed an offensive stance, suddenly grinned. Want my soul? You're welcome, go ahead and take it. No wonder. The perfectly stored right fist, enveloped in tangible energy, slammed into the Big Mom's startled, panicked face with a thunderous force. Steel and iron bones? Steel balloons? Can a gun or a knife be invulnerable to a bullet or a gunshot? Will looked at the teeth flying out of Big Mom's mouth, and his eyes grew fierce. But before she landed on the ground, Will was already waiting in front of her and took a stance to put his fist into her stomach again. Boom. Once again, Will's heavy fist accurately and solidly hit Big Mom's gradually losing consciousness on the head. However, this is not the end, but only the beginning. As one of the four emperors, Big Mom is like a sandbag with no resistance, left, right, heaven, and earth. Every time Will was able to intercept Big Mom's flight path just right, and then knocked her away again before anyone else. The heavy blast of the explosion made everyone's heart skip a beat. Big Mom, who has a strong defense, can withstand such stormy blows of Faceless Will, but if they were in her place, they would probably be scraps in one punch. Chapter 340 Soul Form Big Mom. The soul has always been the most mysterious realm, and no one has been able to fully understand the mystery of it. Even Big Mom, who possesses the fruit of the soul, can only find the key and the way to use this power through long years of fondling. The soul is mysterious and abstract, but at the same time, it is fragile. Just find the right way, a gentle poke, and the bubble that represents the soul will pop and shatter. So the risk of attacking directly with soul power is too great, and after all these years, no desperate situation has ever forced Big Mom to fight for her life. But right now, all fears can be put aside. Everyone must die. Will sensed a faint sense of crisis, so he chose to make the first move. 120% of the output of the shock force was thus channeled through his right hand to Big Mom's head, and an inhuman howl immediately shouted out from Big Mom's mouth. Will was sure that it wouldn't be long before he could smoothly shatter the defenseless Big Mom's head into a pulp. But suddenly his eyes glazed over. As Big Mom's deafening howls were heard, a faint white shadow gradually emerged from her body. Soul? Will suddenly thought of what Big Mom had said before, and in order to avoid turning the boat over in the gutter, The fierce color in his eyes flashed, immediately liberating the restraints on the tremor devil fruit ability. 150%. 200%. 300%. This is a value that even Whitebeard at his peak wouldn't dare to play with, because the force would destroy himself before destroying his enemies. Even so, Whitebeard, who seldom exerted his full strength, suffered numerous injuries and illnesses from the backlash, and his health began to decline at a much faster rate than that of his peers. Like what the word called this power, this is the power of the devil fruit of the earthquake that is said to destroy the world. Without a strong body, you probably would have died first. But after fortifying himself with 45 devil fruits, Will is already immune to the 100% liberated power of the tremor devil fruits, which is based on the power that Whitebeard was able to wield at his peak. On this benchmark, every time Will unleashes the power of the quake fruits, his body will be burdened accordingly. Liberating the power of the tremor devil fruit to 300% means that he has to heal himself properly with the recovery devil fruit afterwards. But compared to these side effects, the 300% power almost instantly shattered the atmosphere, and not just one layer, but layers upon layers, as if space had broken apart from afar. The inside of Big Mom's head was like boiling water, instantly squeezed into a ball. Will could even hear a cracking sound, the sound of bones breaking into crumbs. It is physically impossible for anyone to survive such an injury. But all the while, Big Mom didn't put up any resistance and seemed to give up, but at the same time, the hazy white light on her body grew more and more. This reminds Will of the story of Brooke, who ate the resurrection devil fruit and being reborn again with the user soul. There are so few devil fruits associated with souls, namely Brooke's resurrection devil fruit, Perona's ghost fruit, and Big Mom's soul fruit. Both of the first two can allow their souls to leave their bodies through the ability of the fruit without the slightest effect. Then there's no reason why Big Mom, who eats the fruit of the soul, wouldn't do this. Now the situation is very similar. The soul body has several characteristics. It has no penetrating properties, it can fly without a sense of weight, and it ignores any physical attacks. Will didn't know what other special abilities Big Mom's soul salvation had, so he immediately discarded her corpse and was secretly on guard. When Will shattered Big Mom's brain, the harsh wailing disappeared for a moment, but immediately there was a more uncomfortable scream. If the former can still reduce the volume by blocking the ears, then the latter seems to sound directly in everyone's mind. Even if the ears are blocked, even the deaf cannot escape from the scream. Big Mom's body fell down, but Big Mom in a soul state stood up again. Big Mom, who abandoned her physical body and reappeared in the form of a soul body, is growing up to mouth the ultimate version of strange sounds, which she calls the final soul lament. The remaining Hami's army immediately froze in their tracks upon hearing this elegy for the soul, and then fell to the ground like dominoes. Countless balls of light rose from their bodies, and then entered the body of Big Mom as if they had been summoned. Big Mom was like an inflated balloon that inflated extremely exaggeratedly. It's not enough. It's not enough. Give me all of your souls. Even before the words died down, an even more ear-piercing wail from the souls spread through the entire Cake Island. Those who could not withstand the wave of soul attacks all fell upright on the ground, and then familiar, but much larger, clusters of light emerged from these people, and then swiftly threw themselves at the inflating Big Mom. Among them were people from the Faceless Pirate side, people from the Big Mom Pirate side, and even her children who had their souls taken by her in a coma. Big Mom has become even bigger and more condensed. But she still wasn't satisfied, because she couldn't have a real body anymore, and she had to make Will and his group pay dearly, and she wouldn't allow any of them to leave Cake Island alive. So she immediately turned her attention to the three great Hummies who were hiding and trembling. You are a part of my soul splitting away, and now it is time to return to your mother's arms. Mom, no. I don't want to die. Run. Mom is completely crazy. Zeus, Napoleon, and Prometheus tried to escape, but were immediately horrified to find themselves immobilized. Then Big Mom's soul's body sucked so hard that the souls of the three major Hummies were immediately sucked into her mouth, and then gulped them down with a thud. Clouds drift away, fires die out, and a hat falls helplessly to the ground. The three Hummies are gone for good, but Big Mom feels better than ever. Freed from the confines of her body, her soul power could continue to grow without limit, but at the same time, every second of her existence was consuming a great deal of soul power. In other words, she can live as a soul body, but only if she can snatch enough souls to sustain her consumption in that state. Big Mom's body is dead, but her soul is still alive, and may even live forever. All this thanks to one person. The soul body Big Mom, whose strength climbed to another peak, opened its mouth wide and looked at Will with bloodthirsty eyes. Chapter 341 Ignorance. Now it's your turn to say your last words, Faceless Will. Big Mom's roar blasted directly in the head, but Will was fearless, and his demeanor did not change at all. Last words? Do you think that being free from the shackles of the body will make you stronger? I'm amazed at your stupidity. Now I am invincible. With Big Mom's roar, the palpitating terrifying energy tore apart everything around her, and even Will felt the space around her changing. The sunny sky turned dark with clouds and thunder. The winds whistle over and over again from Cake Island. Big Mom's manic mood actually changed the color of the heavens and the earth. It was incredible. But Will's eyes grew brighter as he witnessed all of this, and at this moment he was certain that what he had in mind was correct. With enough souls, I will be able to do anything. And you will die here, along with the people you brought with you, to become my food. Shanks, Kaido. I will overtake all and become the new pirate king. Mama. Big Mom is laughing as hard as she can, and while laughing she now sees that Will is also laughing, and laughing even more maniacally than her, bending over with tears on the verge of coming out. What are you laughing at? Somewhat irritated, Big Mom locked onto his soul directly and started pulling. The violent suction made Will's body glow white, and that was his soul. But Will, as if he hadn't seen all this, raised his head indifferently and looked mockingly. I laugh at how horribly idiotic you are. It's hard to believe that you don't know anything about the soul. Do I know nothing about the soul? Big Mom was stunned for a moment, then laughed as hard as she could. Mama, if these are your last words, then I admit, you did make me laugh. As a soul devil fruit user, is there anyone in the world who knows more about souls than she does? But she found that the color of ridicule in Will's eyes became more intense. Even your soul is about to be extracted by me at once, and what do you know about dying, you mole? You mean this? Will looked down at the white light emerging from his body and the outline of the circle of souls, then casually pressed that. And the white light disappeared. The soul that was about to be taken out of the body returns to his body. Big Mom's eyes were incredibly wide. No way. How did this happen? She started pulling Will's soul as if she were crazy, but no matter how hard she tried, it was like a stone sunk in the sea, and nothing happened again. What the hell have you done? What have I done? I'm merely using a magnetic field to counteract your abilities. A magnetic field? What's that? Will had no way to explain these theories to Big Mom, who had never matured mentally, and to be honest he didn't understand much either, but it was enough that he could use the power. What exactly is a soul? There are many kinds of explanations, abstract explanations, scientific explanations, religious explanations. Until now, Will was not sure what the soul existing in the pirate world was and how it should be explained. But after seeing Big Mom change the surrounding electromagnetic field with roar, thus changing the color of heaven and earth, he understood everything. From the moment Big Mom abandoned her body and chose to exist in the world as a soul, she had lost completely, and lost without resistance. Is there anyone in the world who understands and uses electromagnetic power better than Will? The answer is no. Will faintly waved his hand, and the dark clouds scattered, revealing the dazzling sunlight. Then he waved his hand again, and the wind stopped howling, and the turbulent waves returned to calm. All the magnetic fields affected by Big Mom's soul returned to their original form. If one can say that the terrifying power of Big Mom's roar changes the color of heaven and earth, that makes one's heart palpitate and one's eyes show despair. Then Will's waving his hand gaiety and then restoring everything to its original state, which made people even less able to resist. That's an area only God can touch. Big Mom, who just now was unstoppable and called for the other 4 emperors to become the king of pirates, finally showed an uncontrollable fear in her eyes. Ignorance is the worst. She thought that she had reached a new peak at the moment and that she was invincible, even as her surroundings changed at her whim. But immediately Will told her in action, invincible? You must be kidding. So if she stays here she will die. As soon as this thought came to mind, Big Mom immediately took a subconscious step back. No, I can't die yet. My kingdom is not finished yet. Sister has not been found yet. I haven't been able to become king of the pirates yet. I can't die here. I haven't lost yet. Must be because there aren't enough souls. Yes, that must be it. I'm going to get out of here, absorb more souls, and then I'll take it all back. Yes, that's right. Big Mom, whose heart had been completely confused, suddenly flew up and tried to escape without saying a word, and everyone who saw it was stunned. The one who left fear in the hearts of millions of people, actually, was beaten away? Still desperately resisting, the scarred Katakuri and the others had a rare look of bewilderment in their eyes. Will couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth. It was too ignorant to try to run now. Then many saw him reach out a hand in the direction of Big Mom and grab it so gently. Then the flying Big Mom bounced back as if it had hit an invisible wall with a thud. An invisible magnetic field locks her in, like a cage designed especially for her. Let me out. The soul of Big Mom, in a state of frenzy, starts pounding on the electromagnetic cage, but the seemingly invulnerable thin layer of electromagnetic walls is desperate, And no matter how Big Mom attacks, the only one who suffers is herself. Her futile attacks and injuries are consuming her body's soul power, and it won't be long before her unsustainable soul completely dissipates into the world. So Big Mom panicked. But she didn't beg for mercy from Will, she just screamed the name Mother in agony. If she was going to die in the next second, she would give up anything to see Mother one more time. At that moment, Big Mom, who was in a state of madness, heard the ghost of Will say, "You will soon meet Mother Carmel. In fact, you already know where she is all these years, don't you? But you don't want to admit it. What a sad story." Chapter 342 Truth and Collapse. The birthday party on my 6th birthday was really so happy. The delicious dessert. The sincere smiles of Mother Carmel and my friends. But why did she disappear after she woke up? Where did everyone go? Huh? With such fun abilities, all the flowers, plants and trees have come to life. You said your name is Prometheus? You are created with my soul? Great, but why don't I remember doing such a thing? What exactly happened that day? Why does Streusen look so ugly every time this question is mentioned? Why do I always have strange dreams? In the dream, Mother Carmel and her friends line up to let her eat them all, and there will be a happy expression on her face. Could it be? No. Everyone must have been captured by the bad guys. Mother Carmel. Mother Carmel. Where are you? Linlin misses you. Where the hell is Mother Carmel, tell me. Big Mom started to rampage, but no matter how much she roared and attacked, she just couldn't break through the electromagnetic cage in front of her. Will looked at her in amazement. He actually felt the pressure. He didn't expect that Big Mom's potential hadn't been completely exhausted by her age. This is an extremely terrifying thing. If he let this form of Big Mom go around harvesting souls, it might really be a disaster for the whole world. But it was too late, and Will, who completely locked her in, would not give her any chance to turn the tables. Just as he was about to completely destroy Big Mom's soul, an unobtrusive ball of light floated out of Big Mom's body and came up to her. Big Mom felt a very familiar scent on it, and she immediately stopped rampaging, shaking all over, and lifted up the weightless ball of soul light. Just as Will said, that possibility had been buried deep in her heart and had become a fuse that would plunge her into complete chaos. That is, the weakness that Caponebej found. On this ball of light, Big Mom sees familiar scenes, familiar friends, familiar desserts. And the tragedy that followed. No. That's not it. How could that be? Stop. Stop. Don't eat them anymore. Please, don't eat them anymore. A seconds later, Big Mom began to collapse and wail, like a beast at the end of its rope trying to deny reality but unable to find a glimmer of hope. It turns out that the soul can also shed tears. Will put down a hand that tried to break the Big Mom soul. It was not that he was incarnate as the Virgin Mary and wanted to keep her alive, but that Big Mom in this state no longer needed his action. Countless souls were bounced off with the cry of Big Mom, who was like a balloon with a leak that quickly returned to its original size, and her condensed soul became illusory and dim as if it might disappear into this world at any time. The ball of light in Big Mom's hand shattered after completing its mission. She subconsciously reached out to grab it, but could only let it float away, and finally froze on the spot with tears on her face. It was not the soul left behind by Mother Carmel she had eaten, but the soul of the Prometheus. Because the soul of Prometheus was a homies shaped by Mother Carmel from her own soul, but it was preserved during the transfer of the soul fruit. Although it is no longer considered a complete independent soul, it still retains its function as a memory carrier. So Big Mom saw everything that happened that day from the perspective of Prometheus. And she was completely devastated. It's like when Luffy was holding Ace's body. That's no longer a living person. Streusen, who insisted on staying, wept as he watched the scene. He knew everything that had happened that day. But he can't say it, not a word, not a single word. Because he knew that Linlin would be devastated when she heard all this. All of their efforts will vanish into thin air. But now, she knows it all. Big Mom lifted her face, which was gradually becoming unreal and transparent, and looked around in confusion, sweeping over the faces of her children one by one before finally landing on Will's body. I lost. Katakuri and the others looked shaken, and some of them even began to cry aloud. Although they had expected this result, when the words "I lost" came out of Big Mom's mouth, they still found it hard to accept. An atmosphere of sadness and confusion instantly enveloped the entire Cake Island. The faceless pirate group, however, was stunned for a moment, setting off an earth-shaking cheer and shout. The battle of the two emperors, and in the end, they won. They are the ultimate winners. Will didn't think that Big Mom would admit her loss, which was harder than defeating her and killing her, and didn't want to be something that Big Mom would say, but she did. Was it too much of a shock to her to learn the truth? Will was only partially right because what Big Mom said next made his heart sigh. Faceless Will, this war is won by you. I will make everyone give up the resistance. I hope that after my death, You can give a way out for those who are still alive. Big Mom, who had been cruel and ruthless all her life, actually came to her senses in the end. What an unspeakable irony. It seems that the truth hit her harder than she thought it would. Will couldn't even find a trace of longing for life in her empty eyes. The atmosphere of sadness permeated the whole Big Mom pirate's side. Smoothie and others covered their eyes but could not stop the tears from falling. A wounded Getakuri was tempted to continue the fight with his men because he would never admit to such a life, but when he saw the unmotivated look of his siblings, his heart felt like it was being clutched by someone with a death grip. He knew that if he continued to fight, everyone would die. So he chose to remain silent. After Will sighed in his heart, he asked Big Mom this question: "If I were the one to lose today, would you spare the people I brought with me?" Big Mom was silent. "If I let them go today, do you think they will thank me? Do you think they'll give up on revenge?" Big Mom knew even less, and her assurances had no effect. The atmosphere suddenly became tense again, and the people on Big Mom's side, who had just lowered their weapons, took up an alert posture again. If the left and right were dead, then who would be foolish enough to be killed by the neck? But the fear and despair in everyone's eyes did not diminish one bit. Is it possible that the once glorious Big Mom pirates are going to disappear completely today? However, just when many people were in despair and ready to fight to the death, Will made a proposal instead. "I can give a way out to those who are willing to surrender, provided they are willing to be stripped of all memories related to the Big Mom pirates." Chapter 343, Kaido the Dragon. The moment the Avengers appeared, Kaido's band of 100 Beasts pirates didn't hesitate to pull away. If he was alone, perhaps Kaido would have chosen to fight the 4 emperors on his own, and even if he lost, there was nothing he could do about it. But others do not have his immortal body. Drought Jack has been lost, so he can't lose his subordinate for nothing, because even the Emperor also needs the help of his subordinates. Just think of that unlucky guy Redfield, who was as strong as Whitebeard and Roger in one-on-one, and what happened? By the time the Navy found him, he was on the ground, exhausted, with no strength to fight back, allowing Garp to pick up the pieces for nothing. Sad, but it's the truth. After the 100 pirates pulled away, the red-haired pirates didn't stop them. After all, he was here to return the favor, so he could not help Will to confront Kaido. After all, he came to return the favor, and it is impossible to help Will and Kaido to die. So the two sides retreated very tacitly. The presence of the Avengers here means that the battle of the 2 emperors on Cake Island is over, and the result, of course, speaks for itself. When Will said he was going to kill Big Mom and bother him to intercept Kaido's beast pirates in the nearby sea, he also advised Will to not do it. After all, how can war between 2 emperors be easy? But at that time, Will had already made up his mind, and the reason he gave was so reasonable that he couldn't refuse, so he simply returned the favor and took the job, which wasn't the first time he did it anyway. In the end, he didn't expect that he would really do it. The Navy lost a lot of men to force the death of the aged Whitebeard and eliminated one of the 4 emperors. But he never thought that Big Mom would be defeated head-on by Will, who had just secured his position as the 4th emperor. The members of the red-haired pirate group relaxed after the big battle they had just experienced, wondering aloud how the faceless pirate group would entertain them this time, how many days they would hold a cocktail party, and whether there would be any beautiful ladies to accompany them. However, just at this time, Shanks suddenly felt a burning sense of crisis. He suddenly turned his attention to the direction in which the 100 Beasts pirates were leaving, and Kaido, who had already put a long distance between them, suddenly transformed into a divine dragon and flew up into the sky, opening his mouth in the direction of the red-haired pirate's ship while Shanks and others were unprepared. Dragon's breath. The scorching dragon's breath came to the red-haired pirates in a flash, containing energy that could easily destroy a city. Still careless, Shanks drew his sword with a heavy gaze, and the water around him began to boil and tumble, not knowing whether it was because of Kaido's scorching dragon's breath or because of Shanks' despotic attack. How could Kaido, who had already been stopped for the 2nd time by red-head pirates only to return with no success, not be annoyed? He knew that the dragon's breath couldn't kill the Shanks, but by catching them off guard, he would make the red-hair pirates pay for it. In the nick of time, the sword in Shanks' hand met Kaido's dragon's breath head-on, and the two very different forces scorched the air, exploding fountains of overflowing energy on the surface of the sea. At the same time, the ship beneath Shanks' feet was pushed away by the impact, and there was an overwhelming sound. All of them didn't expect that Kaido would sneak a return shot from so far away, and by the time they realized that they were under attack, their captain had already drawn his sword and stood up to it. Even if Shanks had been able to stop the attack, the ship would probably have fallen apart beneath his feet, a scene that no one in the red-hair band of pirates would have wanted to see. For good men running free on the ocean, the ship under their feet is their home. And Shanks was in a dilemma. He had done his best to protect the ship beneath his feet, trying not to let the force of the confrontation extend to the ship, but it was in vain, His feet were on the ship, how could it not have an impact? To defeat Kaido's dragon's breath as quickly as possible, he would have to increase the intensity of his attacks, but then the ship would suffer more damage. But if the ship remained in its current state, the ship would be scrapped when Kaido's attacks wore off. Just when Shanks was in a dilemma, a stout thunder dragon suddenly came in midway, and a violent explosion directly cut off the hot dragon's breath. And Shanks immediately shattered the remnants of his strength to save the ship beneath him, while looking for a figure. In the sky, Will, who was stuck between the beast pirates and the red hair pirates, was squinting at Kaido's dragon form. What was in front of him unlocked Will's confusion. There has been so much speculation about Kaido's devil fruit that it's surprising that what Kaido ate was actually the dragon fruit of the ancient zone beast species. So the question is, Kaido is the owner of the dragon fruit, so what devil fruit did dragon eat? Is it wind? Or is it the weather? Or something simply unexpected? Things just got funnier and funnier all of a sudden. Even as Will gazed at Kaido, who had just spat out his dragon's breath to attack the red hair pirates, stood erect with pride and looked at him carefully. The reason he didn't show up at the time of Will's fight for the position of the fourth emperor was that because he didn't have to. After he was trapped at the bottom of the sea, he continued his suicide journey without stopping. That's why the 100 Beasts pirates had kept a low profile for a while. But now it seemed that he had underestimated the person in front of him. Did you kill Linlin? Yes. Will's answer made the red hair pirates and the 100 Beasts pirates collectively stare at each other, but it was one of the 4 emperors? Did he really kill her? If it's true, then it's amazing. Kaido was slightly silent, then his eyes quickly filled with blood. Linlin was once kind to me, so I came. Now that Linlin is dead, I will use your head to repay that kindness. Enjoy this brief moment of joy, brat. I hope the next time we meet again, you'll still have a helper like red hair. After his fierce gaze flowed over Will and Shanks, Kaido regained his human form and fell back into the ship and picked up a huge wine gourd and started pouring it into his mouth, pouring it down with tears flowing down, and the people around him immediately dodged far away. The 100 Beasts pirates of the sea continued drifting away. The red hair pirates, who were pushed far away by a dragon's breath, also rushed back. Chapter 344 The Rocks Pirates? Now that lunatic Kaido is completely offended by you, and it has also caused us to be targeted. After Will fell from the sky, Shanks looked at him while sighing and said. Will, hearing it, just laughed and answered, when has your red hair pirates ever been afraid of Kaido? Kaido has already suffered twice because of you, and he probably hates you more than me. As soon as this was said, Lucky Roo and others, who were still a little bit angry at the bottom of their hearts, immediately hooked shoulders and whistled together with a big smile. Even if they were the same 4 emperors, they would still love to compare each other, and their men would undoubtedly care more about that. Although Will was telling the truth, it just didn't feel the same when it came from his mouth. Kaido, who threatened to take the head of the faceless Will, was beaten back twice by them, and their sense of honor and pride was suddenly aroused. Think about it, among the 4 emperors, Big Mom was slaughtered by faceless Will, and Kaido took the initiative to declare war on Will before the results of the 2 are even half a catty, and finally the red hair pirate group, twice beaten back Kaido, even if it was slightly better. Just 2 words, awesome. Lucky Roo and the others were all happy, but not so unhappy when they looked at Will, who had gotten them into this war. Will didn't know that these guys had already made up so many things in their heads, and he was discussing something big with Shanks. If Big Mom and Kaido are barely one faction among the 4 emperors, then he and Shanks can barely make an offensive and defensive alliance because their ideas don't conflict and they recognize each other, which is key. Did you really kill the Big Mom? Yes, even her soul is completely dissipated, dead beyond death. Shanks still couldn't help but look twice at Will after hearing this. How on earth did this guy do it? If he had gone up against Big Mom, he would have had the confidence to defeat Big Mom, but no one can be sure of the final result if it were to be a life and death struggle. But Will did it, and he didn't seem to be hurt. That's a little too scary. After the death of Big Mom, the world will definitely change again, and the vacant position of the 4 emperor will be like a piece of rotten meat attracting a number of flies to plunge into this bottomless pit. By then the sea will be extremely chaotic, and I wonder how many people will die for the position of the 4th emperor. Under the lure of this name, the most important thing is that this time the Navy and the world government will not stand by and watch a new 4th emperor emerge from the sea. Shanks looked worried. He always had the biggest frame of mind of all, and the most far-sighted view of things, and there was one thing he didn't say, and that was that unless a monster like you, who cannot be described by common sense, appeared again, he would quickly take power and end this turmoil. However, Will doesn't have the worrying personality of Shank, especially one who loves to worry for others blindly. He will always do what he thinks, and only when he does will he know if it's right or not. I happen to think the opposite of you. I think it's better to be messy because it's easier to get things done when the water gets murky, right? Shanks stared into his eyes and asked in a deep voice, so the word dragon exterminator wasn't just chosen, was it? Are you a member of the Revolutionary Army? No. Are you trying to replace it? Who knows? Will looked at the sky with a profound glance. Shanks couldn't find the answer he wanted on his face, so he sighed and said, "You give me the feeling that you are becoming more and more dangerous. I have paid you back the favor I owe you, and I will continue our adventure with my men." Will didn't get angry but smiled cheerfully and agreed, "Wise choice, but I believe you'll still be on my side in the end. I'm not sure what you've been plotting or what you're afraid of, but if someone has to be the starter, then let me be." Shank was shaken, and then calmly said, "Then let time prove it to me." "Yes, but it looks like you won't be bringing anyone to the victory party after the Great War." "I'm sorry," Shank laughed. "Next time. This time I'm just returning the favor. I have nothing to do with Big Mom's life or death, and I don't want to convey the message to some people that the Red Hair Pirates have joined forces with the Faceless Pirates, so let's forget it." Will knew that Shanks had his own pride, so instead of persuading, he pointed to Lucky Roo and the others, who were already discussing the evening's program. "They're going to hate you." Shanks hearing it laughs. "Even if we can't attend your party, we can still have a celebration party for 3 days and 3 nights. Will nodded when he heard it. The Red Hair Pirates are famous for their love of cocktail parties, and without outsiders, they would probably drink even more heavily. But before they parted, Will couldn't help but ask, what is the relationship between Big Mom and Kaido, and what does Kaido owe Big Mom? The smile on Shanks' face faded away as if he had recalled a memory he didn't want to talk about. It took a while before Will heard Shanks say, "Have you heard the name Rock?" Will's eyes flickered and nodded slightly. "I've heard a bit about it. It's rumored that it was a dreadful existence that dominated the sea before the Great Age of Pirates." Shanks nodded, then continued, "Yes, before Roger became the Pirate King, the Rock's pirates were the most powerful existence on the seas. The young Big Mom and Kaido were both parts of the Rock's pirates." "So that's it. I didn't think I was really asking the right person." Faced with Will's probing, Shanks did not respond but continued to tell about the Rock's pirates. "Do you know why Garp is called a hero?" Will knew a little, but not necessarily accurately, so he shook his head. Because he was involved in the destruction of the Rock's pirates, it was for the sake of the Navy's reputation that the world government stepped in to make Garp a naval hero, and put all the glory for the destruction of the Rock's pirates on his shoulders. This god-making campaign was an unprecedented success, and Garp became not only a naval hero but also a hero in everyone's heart. Since then, the former sea hegemon completely fell apart. Some chose to retire, while others continued to go to sea to become a hegemon themselves. Chapter 345 Shocking the World. What exactly is the relationship between Shanks and Rocks? Will already has an answer in his mind, but it is hard to say whether the answer he has in mind is correct or not unless Shanks admits it himself. Unfortunately, after telling a lot of things about the Rock's pirates, Shanks regained his composure and then left with a group of people complaining, as if they had never been in the sea. Until Will returned, he didn't get an answer as to why Kaido owed Big Mom a favor. He always had a hunch that maybe this matter had something to do with the huge scar on Kaido's body and that if he knew about it, he would be able to completely break Kaido's immortal body in his next fight with the 100 Beasts pirates. A few days later, an explosive news story swept the world. Big Mom is dead. Faceless Will led his people to wipe out the Big Mom pirate group, and Big Mom that became a nightmare for countless people didn't even make it to escape, so she died at the hands of Will, and that was one-on-one without anyone bothering them. This battle between the two four emperors came to an end in front of countless eyewitnesses. The end result is unimaginable. Although the outlying forces of the Faceless pirate group were badly hit, with countless casualties, the core members survived, only with minor injuries. On the other hand, the defeated side of the Big Mom pirates suffered heavy casualties, with all the peripheral forces annihilated, the core members killed and wounded, and was being taken as a prisoner. This is incredible. Almost everyone thought that even if the Faceless pirates could win, they would end up with a crushing victory, but this result almost punched them in the face. What does this prove? It proves that even if they have the same title as four emperors, there is a gap and even restraint between each other. Yes, a lot of people can't accept the result and are starting to find evidence for why Faceless Will easily defeated Big Mom. If Faceless Will had mastered something or other that restrained Big Mom's ability, then it would have been logical from the public declaration of war to the final result. But no matter what anyone says or speculates, the Faceless pirates became the first Emperor's pirates to defeat the power of their level. As many people predicted, the world was shocked. If it can be said that the Faceless Will during the War of the Best was still a budding hero, then the Faceless Will who fought Kaido head-on, defeated the Golden Lion, and defeated all challengers in one fell swoop to take the throne of the fourth Emperor has undoubtedly revealed his ambition completely. and showed the world his ferocious fangs of devouring man. And now, trampling on the corpse of Big Mom to climb even higher, he has pushed his reputation to another peak. What no one had ever done before, he did. Compared to him, it seems that the Navy's proud war of the best has become a laughingstock. Countless people have came to regard Will as the strongest of the four emperors and worship him. If these people knew that after the death of Big Mom, Kaido threatened to take the head of Faceless Will and that sooner or later there would be a battle between the two sides, then the world would go completely crazy. The smooth pattern of the four emperors coexisting peacefully together, always getting along fine, is something many people are tired of seeing. They want to see the four emperors denounce each other. They want to reshuffle the deck and build a new four emperors. They are afraid that the world will not be chaotic. And somehow, Will has become the symbol of a new era of pirates. Countless young pirates see him as a role model, and the biggest wish is to join the Faceless Pirate group and become one of them. The world government must be the big promoter of this secret affair. People like Shanks who see through the world government's tricks know that the world government is secretly urging the pirates to deplete the strength of all pirates in the sea, let them fight for a so-called four-emperor title, and for them, it's the best result if they all die together. So that no one can shake the domination of the Celestial Dragons. In the headquarters of the Revolutionary Army, Dragon, dressed in a cloak, was amazed and put down the newspaper in his hand. He couldn't imagine how that guy did it. In fact, before Faceless Will openly declared war on the Big Mom, their organization was not very optimistic about the results of the war. Many of them also believe that the final result, no matter who wins, is very likely to be a disastrous victory, for others to make a wedding dress. There was even a proposal for the Revolutionary Army to stop the Faceless Pirates from stepping into the abyss, or simply for them to be the profitable fishermen. But all of this was rejected by Dragon, who, unlike these opinions, was thinking about whether to help Will out in the dark, to get closer to each other again. He didn't think that Faceless Will would be an unsure, overwhelmed and reckless person. If he had to place a bet, he would rather bet on a big win for the Faceless Pirates. But because of the unanimous disapproval of the others, the final discussion resulted in a wait-and-see approach, or else the credit for defeating the Big Mom pirates would definitely be given to the Revolutionary Army. What a pity. Dragon has always thought that the cooperation with the Faceless Pirate Group is the most correct thing he has done in the past few years. He wants money and they have the money, strength and the Faceless Pirates have the strength, and Will doesn't point his fingers at all on what to do. It is estimated that he will never find such a good partner. Not the second one. The relationship between the Faceless Pirates and a Revolutionary Army had been promising, but it was ruined by a series of guys who were only interested in immediate gains. Dragon doesn't doubt their loyalty to the organization, but it seems that his power to distribute the profits has fed their ambitions, and it's time to do some hammering. If the Revolutionary Army ever needed a prefix in front of its name, it would have to be Dragon. In one of the secret bases of the world government, the five elders secretly summoned Stussy. How is the infiltration plan going? He never cares whether his men are loyal or not, so I easily inserted a large number of spies. But at the same time, he values the core members of the Faceless Pirates, and our people are actively gaining combat credits to break into the core group of Faceless Pirates, but so far progress has been slow. Speed up the plan, but go without exposing. We will provide you with the appropriate facilities. Be sure to break into the core of the Faceless Pirate Group as soon as possible, in search of the real Pluto blueprint. This person, Faceless will definitely have a weakness and will have to be found. If he can't be used for our purposes, then he will have to be destroyed. Now that you have gained part of his trust, this is the opportunity, and this mission must be accomplished even if you lose your life. Yes. Stussy retires respectfully. Chapter 346, Studying the Soul Devil Fruit. Inside the makeshift prison on Cake Island, Pudding is looking agitated and persuading anxiously, "Brother Kitakuri, you're really going to die if you keep this up." Kitakuri, who was locked in his cell by the sea prism stone handcuffs, looked at Pudding with a calm face and said, "If you get your memories wiped, it is true that you can start a new life, but would that still be me? And no matter what, it was Mom who gave us life and raised us, and it's enough that if you continue the Charlotte family line, the Charlotte family can't be looked down upon. But this is a pointless sacrifice. If Mother was still alive, she would never want to see Brother Kitakuri end his life like this." Pudding would never forgive Will for killing her mother, but the murderer didn't kill everyone and gave the rest of the Charlotte family a chance to live, so it seems that she should be grateful to Will again for not killing her. If possible, she didn't want any of her siblings to be buried with her mother anymore. Kitakuri looked at Pudding and smiled happily. "I'm sorry, Pudding. I'm a useless brother, and it's all up to you to take care of everything." Pudding burst into tears and cried loudly, "Open the cell door, I want to say a final goodbye to Brother Kitakuri." The guards on the side hesitated for a moment but did so anyway, and through their observations these days, they could see that Will seemed to hold her in high regard. When the cell door opened, Pudding immediately jumped in front of Kitakuri, and the two of them felt brother and sisterly affection for the first time in a long time. Then the next second Kitakuri stared at her, and then passed out. With a gloomy and evil look on her face, Pudding pulled the memory film out of Kitakuri's head. "Brother Kitakuri, have you forgotten how good a liar I am? I'm sorry, I won't let you die." The guard who saw this scene immediately retreated far away, looking scared. The scene in front of him was not the first time he saw, and he was only following orders to cooperate. Then, with a gloomy face, but with tears streaming down her face, Pudding began to quickly erase Kitakuri's memories, and at the same time transplanted a false memory that had already been fabricated, and finally, according to Will's request, placed a memory bomb in Kitakuri's head that was unable to produce any hostility towards the members of the Faceless Pirate group. It was as if she had never been here before, and left with tears on her face. It was like an endless torture for her to personally erase the memories of all her brothers and sisters these days, to watch these relatives never remember her again, and not even to have her existence in their future life. It was really torture. To make matters worse, the ability of her devil fruit gave her a strong memory but was unable to modify her own memory in any way, that is to say, everything that has happened so far will accompany her in the rest of her life like a nightmare. In this comparison, it seems that the others who can't remember anything are happier. After finishing today's work, Pudding came to Will's room as usual to report the situation. In terms of potential, in the entire Big Mom Pirates, Kitakuri is the most amazing. Maybe in a few years, Kitakuri will be the next Redfield. What a shame. Well done, you saved his life, or I would have had to kill him to save it. Pudding lowered her head in silence. I'll arrange a new living environment as soon as possible, and you can still visit them sometime in the future. To be honest, I have considered taking the memory fruit into my own hands, but I'm not a murderous person, so you know what I mean. Pudding bit her lips and nodded, knowing that if she died, the memory fruit would be taken away by the man in front of her. And once he got hold of the memory fruit, then her brother and the others would probably become puppets of the Faceless Pirates, serving the enemies who killed their mother. What a terrible thing to do. So she would rather bear this suffering all by herself, and fulfill all Will's requirements with due diligence. Only by showing her own value can she live. She can keep the fruits of her memory from falling into the hands of the other party, and she can ensure the safety of her family. Even if her life or death was in the hands of the man in front of her, she could only put all of it on the line to gamble on the future. After reporting all she needed to report, Pudding left in silence. Perhaps the best thing about living here is that no one will look at her third eye differently, because there are pure three-eyed tribes in the Faceless Pirates. After Pudding left, Will once again contemplated whether he had done the right thing. He wanted to control his power, not let it control him. Of course, he will not be converted to a holy mother. All the people whose memories have been wiped have been placed in special islands by him, and they are all free, but only within certain limits. As long as these people are not allowed to leave their sphere of influence, even if someone tries to use them to cause trouble, they will have to pay a much more painful price. Shaking his head to stop thinking about these troubling matters, Will began to study the soul fruit again. In the process, he discovered that the homies that was given life with ordinary soul power, its strength or lack of strength all depended on its state before it was activated, which meant that there was no potential to speak of. A tree was just a tree, and a flower was just a flower. But if Will is willing to divide a part of his soul and use it to create a homies, then the activated homies will have the characteristic of being able to grow. For example, the original Prometheus was just a miniature of a fire, so it was very small when it was activated. But after being fed by Big Mom for many years, it grows larger and larger, both in size and power, than ever before. However, it is impossible to divide a person's soul indefinitely, and if he divides too many souls, he will die first. So without compromising himself, this has to be done carefully. Chapter 347 The new three great homies. Nonetheless, Will still divided 3 souls to activate the homies, and 1 powerful homies was enough to increase his battle power again. Only unlike Big Mom's usage, the soul carrier he chose was an elemental body he separated from the devil fruit, which was in overload, to begin with. The homies created in this way can be powerful right from the start, without having to be fed bit by bit. So in a clearing on Cake Island, to Will's left stood a 10-meter-tall lava giant, powerful and domineering, and from time to time the lava that fell low to the ground made a thunderous sound, looking like the lava titan in the movie Wrath of the Gods. And Will named it Malphite. The unstoppable lava giant, Malphite. Standing on the right is a yellow sand giant with a dog's head and a human body, and as the wind blows through the dense yellow sand, the sand becomes somewhat illusory. And he named it Nasus, the god of death in the desert. At the same time, a thundering dragon with beautiful electric light shining all over its body hovered over Will and roared. If the thunder dragon he used in the past was merely a means of attacking after shaping lightning into a form, Then this thunder dragon now hovering above him was a living being with a soul. It's called Sol. The three major hummies created by Will with his own split soul, Malphite, Nasus and Sol. Perhaps still a little attached to a certain game, so the activated image is very close to it, so we'll simply use these three names for them. And this can be called a kind of commemoration of it. After all, he can never go back. And with these three helpers, he will have an absolute advantage in the upcoming war with the 100 Beasts pirate group. Alright, come back when you've had enough fun. Will immediately called them back as he looked at the disfigured mountain that had been ravaged before him. When he heard his master's call, Malphite, whose body was covered with hot lava, immediately shrank to the size of a man, and the lava on its surface quickly condensed into lava armor, although the dark red lava flowing inside its body could still be seen through the cracks of the armor, but at least it had already been separated from the state of being a man or woman and was not going to cause destruction everywhere. At this point, Nasus, who has a dog's head but somehow exudes an air of nobility, is much better, because the sand in its normal state is not that lethal. The only one that was a bit jumpy was the thunder dragon Sol, who roared excitedly in the sky for 2 times before slowly changing back to a meter-long state and falling down. It was the one who gave it life, so Sol wanted to get close to Will after it fell, and it wanted to land on Will's head, but it was occupied by a small guinea pig, which was also eyeing Sol who wanted to occupy its nest. Roar. Proclaims his territorial sovereignty in a very aggressive manner. After being stunned for a moment, the bewildered Sol immediately responded with a deafening roar. The two little guys' roars were both thunderous, but there is a difference between a dragon's roar and a rat's cry, and the little dot was caught off guard and almost flew away. But fortunately, it was tightly buckled with its own small paws, and was not driven away from Will's hair. The little dot that was caught in the hand nodded its head and pointed at the puzzled Sol and complained at the same time. It's obvious that it was the one who provoked it first. This little thing is really smart. Will cryptically put it back on top of his head, and then the little dot immediately erected upright as if see, I am the boss, making the newly born Sol feel the deep malice. It's angry. Opening his mouth wanting to teach little dot a lesson, but before he opened his mouth, Will pulled it around his arm. Although the current has been reduced to a minimum, it is still fatal for ordinary people. It's not a big deal for Will, but he still feels numb and itchy. The first thing he noticed was that the current was so strong that he could not even see it. Immediately, like a general who had won a battle, the little dot danced proudly on Will's head with a cha-cha-cha. After returning with a few pets, Snowball came to Will's room with a well-prepared afternoon tea. Made a decision? Will raised his head in surprise. Ever since Big Mom died, little Snowball seemed to have changed into a different person, and the endless emptiness after her revenge made her a little lost for a while. In the past, all she wanted was to take revenge on Big Mom. But now that Big Mom is dead, it's as if she has lost her purpose to live, and all day long she's lost her mind. Will knew that she was struggling with one thing, and that was whether or not she should continue her journey as a pirate with her companions. After all, Snowball's dream was not to be a pirate, but to open a small restaurant in a quiet and peaceful town, and to smile happily at the customers who gobbled up her food every day. Will didn't force her to stay but gave her time to think about it, and now it looked like Snowball had made her final decision. I hope this isn't the last meal you'll make for me. Will picked up the steaming hot black tea and said, looking at Snowball very seriously. Only little Snowball did not reply, but skillfully lit a lady's cigarette, looking out the window slightly distracted. It took a long time for Will to hear her say, I've thought about it, although the time I spent with you all was very enjoyable, drifting on the ocean as a pirate is not the life I want. But this journey has come so far, so how can I leave before the end? It's better to have a beginning and an end, so I decided to stay. Simply as a chef. And thank you. It's a little late, though. Will immediately put a heartfelt smile on his face. In that case, take out all your skills and let's have a good meal tonight. Nami and the others are so worried about you these days that they can't think about food or drink. Snowball immediately spat out a smoke ring in disdain. How could you possibly eat that kind of pig food? Chapter 348 Their Return Unplanned. The tree fell and scattered. After the death of Big Mom, Will almost effortlessly included the all nations completely, so much so that there are already 67 islands on which the flag of the Faceless Pirates has been hoisted. Nearly half of the New World's territory has been conquered by him, prima facie establishing his name as a sea ruler. After Faceless Will single-handedly killed Big Mom, countless people have come to regard him as the next pirate king, having surpassed Kaido and Shanks in terms of momentum. Many believe that if there will be the next overlord of the seas, it will be this man. And the Navy and the world government have given up on increasing the bounty on Will and others any further. It can continue to rise, but it's not necessary. To a certain extent, the strength of the power has nothing to do with the amount of the bounty, even if it rises to 10 billion, so what? You can't defeat what you can't defeat, you just die in vain. A few days later, Will left behind a large number of men to take over Big Mom territory and then took his own men back to the Golden Isles aboard the Avengers. Originally, Will thought that the Navy would send people to rescue the Navy prisoners even if they didn't get involved in the war with Big Mom. Even before the war with Big Mom started, he had reached an understanding with Aokiji. But he didn't expect that everything was calm until he successfully took over the Big Mom site and returned here. The Navy never showed up. So this made him a little uncomfortable. How could that guy, Aokiji, believe in him so much? Or has he made up his mind to fight the world government? When the Avengers docked, the island was filled with earth-shattering cheers. After all, that's Big Mom of the Four Emperors. After so many years on the ocean, running the Cake Island neighborhood into barrels that even the Navy could only retreat from. The result? Their boss openly declares war on her, and immediately afterwards leads people straight to their lair, completely unafraid of Big Mom getting ready in advance, and even gives her time to rally her troops. This is how confident he is to do this. And the most important thing is that they not only won this battle of the Four Emperors, but they won it uncontested and righteously. The Faceless Pirates defeated the Big Mom Pirates by sheer force of arms, which made those of them who stayed back home both excited and regretful, wishing they had been on Cake Island and watched their boss crush Big Mom like ants. They are shaking with excitement just thinking about it. Seeing this scene, Will and the others didn't feel much, but they were all in a good mood, and it would have been unpleasant if they had come back from a victory and everyone had came to greet them with paralyzed faces. Classy, that's right. It's time for a cocktail party. Cheer up. Oh. Let's get drunk tonight. Long live the captain. Viva. Nami and the others involuntarily rested their eyes on the elegant figure in front of them, with a soft and smiling look that could not be explained. The big words and bragging he had said at the beginning, he was turning them into reality little by little, and now he was not only really sitting on the throne of the Four Emperor, but he had even killed another Four Emperor as he had said at the beginning. What an incredible man. Come to think of it, perhaps the least regrettable decision they made all these years was choosing to trust this man and follow him out to sea. All this, as if in a dream, it's so dreamy, and unreal. As the boss of everyone, Will's words made the whole island busy. The preparation for the reception of nearly 1,000 people was not easy. But the chief cooks were all smiling without any reluctance. Their masters had done such a great job, they had to celebrate, and there was nothing to be afraid of. No matter how busy the cooks and handymen were, they could not affect the leisurely state of Will and the others. It was time to relax after the battle, knowing that Kaido's band of pirates were still eyeing them from somewhere. How to fight, how to deal with Kaido and how to find a way to kill him are the little troubles that plague Will now. It's not that he's swollen up after killing Big Mom, but Kaido is not invincible, and even if he really can't kill him in the end, it's not a problem to trap him. The dragon fruit? It's a shame to waste such a handsome devil fruit and have it eaten by that guy Kaido. As the emissary of justice, Will is of course going to be the one to find a way to hammer Kaido to death and snatch the dragon fruit. If you can't do it once, do it twice. If you can't do it twice, do it 3 times. Will was also frantic. He didn't believe that there was anyone in the world who couldn't be killed. So the question arises, if Kaido were to force himself to eat the second devil fruit, would he die? Or did the Navy, which repeatedly captured Kaido and did everything in its power to execute him, never consider such an option? It shouldn't be a heartache for them to waste a devil in exchange for Kaido's life. Or has Kaido become so difficult that no one can pry his mouth open and force him to eat it? There were so many things he couldn't figure out that Will began to wonder if the rumor that he would die after eating the second devil fruit was false. If he wants to experiment with it, he can do so. And even if the experiments do explode and die, he can still recycle the devil fruit, so there is no waste. After all, he wasn't sure what the outcome of the situation would be. Should we give it a try? Will is deep in thought. I would like to erect a tombstone at the back of the hill for my parents and tell them by the way that the brutal Big Mom has been punished. Hey. Do you hear me? Huh? Will sitting on the sofa slightly bowed his head to look at the little snowball standing in front of him with an unhappy face. I don't know why, but every time you sit and look at me it makes me angry. Are you making fun of my height? Asshole. Absolutely not. It's just ridicule at best. And it's the kind with good intentions. But then the words became, what did you just say? For the gods who control your 3 daily takeaways, afternoon tea and evening snacks, it's best to remain respectful, otherwise, poisoning and whatnot is child's play for her, and if she sneaks some special ingredients into his food, he doesn't even know if he is eating it, or better yet, he doesn't know that he eats it. Snowball, who had successfully changed the subject, gave Will a big blank look, and then repeated what she had just said. Will really had no reason to refuse such a small thing, and was even a little happy, because it meant that Snowball really wasn't going to leave, at least for now. Chapter 349 Become Enemy or Companion? At night, in the sea where the Golden Island is located, a few large ships float quietly on the surface, retaining only sporadic fires, not as illumination, but as some kind of signal. After an indefinite period of time, a few shadows faintly appeared on the sea ahead. And when it's close enough to the island, it was actually a naval warship. But strangely enough, however, the ships facing it neither escaped nor gave way, just waiting for the warship to approach as if they had come for this very moment. Soon, the warship stopped in front of the ships, the plank bridge was quickly set up, and a man wrapped in a cloak approached the ship alone. The mysterious cloaked man aboard the large ship also had a shrouded man standing there waiting for him, and they were the only two people on the large ship facing each other. "I didn't think you really dared to come. Aren't you afraid that I'll bring someone to let you stay here, a fleet admiral of the Navy, on this sea forever?" The person who spoke slowly came out of the shadows, and the moonlight shone on his face. It was none other than one of the four emperors, Faceless Will, who killed Big Mom not long ago, and who had a reputation for being able to stop children from crying just after his name is mentioned. The other person he was talking about was the cloaked man who only dared to show his face secretly, the current Navy Fleet Admiral, Aokiji. Why would Aokiji, as a Fleet Admiral, take the risk of meeting the supposed enemy, the fourth emperor, alone? Will is not Shanks, nor does he have the fruit of face, and the opportunity for the two to meet today stems from that call after the Navy's fiasco on Golden Island. According to common sense, Aokiji should have regarded Will, who killed a large number of naval forces, as his greatest enemy, but in fact, Will was the victim in that battle. There was no personal grudge between the two sides, but the difference in position, coupled with the world government's overbearing attitude, eventually led to that tragedy. In the end, Will's treatment of the naval prisoners also indirectly indicated his attitude, which was the benchmark for both sides to reach a consensus on the matter. Aokiji, who hid his whole body in his cloak, ignored Will's words of ridicule or threat, and said frankly, "Have you brought everyone?" Will yawned, "They are all in the ship, take them away. These four-legged guys can eat more than one, it's annoying." Aokiji nodded, his observation hockey did perceive many familiar aura, then he pulled out a wooden box from under his cloak. "This is what you want." Will took it and opened it and took a look at it, nodding his head in satisfaction, then said, "I like doing business with honest people, and although it's a bit of a loss, I'll take this great gift without any hesitation, and the next time you start a war, I don't promise that I'll still give you the chance to ransom your captives. The one who wants to get rid of you the most has always been the world government. If I were to plan it, I would choose to silently build up my strength until I found your real weakness, and then concentrate my power to kill you in one blow, never giving you a chance to escape, rather than like last time, when I thought I could pile up an emperor just by sheer superiority of troops and warships. To put it bluntly, if Whitebeard had been 30 years younger at the time of the War of the Tops, I would have done everything in my power to dissuade the others and stop them from carrying out the public execution of Ace. Real monsters are not something that can be fathomed with common sense, and the ones that can kill monsters must be more powerful monsters, and definitely not feeble humans. Aokiji said this unceremoniously, directly exposing the fairy tale. At the same time, Aokiji is not afraid to let Will know how he will deal with him, because this is a plot unless Will really leads people to ambush here and prepares to let him stay here forever. But if he dared to come alone, would he really leave no one behind? Will looked at him in surprise, then smiled and said, "Monster? It's not very nice, but it's a compliment, right? Maybe, and you can take it as a recognition of, well, strength. Thanks, but I didn't call you here specifically to meet this side to hear this." Aokiji looked like he couldn't be denied. Indeed, he had said goodbye to the front line since he became a fleet admiral, and there were only two possibilities for Will to insist on his personal appearance. The first was that he had been ambushed and wanted to be killed as a fleet admiral. The second is that there is something too important to talk about and they must meet to talk about it. He personally preferred the second possibility, especially after Will asked him not to show up in a big way, but to come in secret, and preferably not to let anyone else know that he had been here, let alone who he had seen. He was more certain. "Just say what you have to say, and the next time we see each other again, it may be on the battlefield." "You're right, but not accurate enough. Meeting on the battlefield may not be an enemy, but it may also be a companion, don't you think?" Aokiji's pupil shrank momentarily, and a look of surprise flashed across his face, the first time since his arrival that he had allowed his paralyzed face to change. After a brief silence, Aokiji said in a deep voice, "You are a pirate and I am a navy, and I think we will only be enemies on the battlefield when we meet again." Will did not dwell on this issue, but casually asked again, "Then do you think the word dragon extermination contains any deeper issues?" At this moment, Aokiji really feels that the man in front of him is a madman, a pirate actually arrogant to mention the word destroy the dragon in front of the fleet admiral of the navy. If he is not crazy, then what? "I'll give you one last warning, Never get any ideas about the dragons. Looking at Aokiji's face, Will laughed again. In order to truly carry out justice, the Navy must be independent of the jurisdiction of the world government. You will not fail to understand this truth. I also believe that you must be secretly planning this matter, am I right? In response to Will's question, Aokiji chose to respond with silence. It was a good thing that Will did not expect to hear any answer from him, because if Aokiji dared to announce such a big thing to the public, it would only mean that he had already done it and the naval independence was a foregone conclusion. Will then said, as if talking to himself, if the Navy wants to become independent, it would only happen if the world government and the celestial dragons are removed, because they will never allow the power in their hands to be out of their control. Then there is only one final outcome: the world government will definitely choose to kill all the admirals who support naval independence, and then replace them with a group of more obedient dogs who will keep the naval power in their hands and continue to work for the dragons. In other words, the fact that you and I are potential enemies of the celestial dragon, so in that future war, shall we still be enemies? Fleet Admiral Aokiji?